Chapter 694. If there are no accidents, tomorrow will be fine. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai said to Luke Shan. He could actually do it this afternoon. But there was no need to rush. It was as if he cared about this deal. But in fact, Jiang Hai didn't care much about this. If that's the case, it's really great, then I'll come back tomorrow. Hearing that Jiang Hai gave a satisfactory answer, Luke Shan couldn't help but smile and say. Then after a few polite words with Jiang Hai, the three shook hands and parted ways. When the two walked out of Jiang Hai's exhibition hall, Anthony Shan, who had hardly spoken, looked at his father. Father, I don't understand. Why don't we study the composition of his grass and make it ourselves? Or buy his ranch directly? Buying grass like this, when will it end? And the most important thing is that the lifeline is still in his hands. Looking at Luke Shan, Anthony Shan couldn't help but say with some doubts. To be honest, their family's power in Texas is almost the same as Jiang Hai's in Winthrop. They are basically like local tyrants. They can get whatever they want. This is the first time they have taken the initiative to seek cooperation. You don't understand, this Jiang Hai is very useful. Hearing his son's words, Luke Shan smiled and said mysteriously, I don't quite understand. Hearing Luke Shan's words, Anthony Shan couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. Child, you are still too young. This Jiang Hai can now sell grass so fearlessly, which means that he is absolutely sure that we can't copy the grass. Now we are seeking cooperation, first, to get closer to him, and second, to guard against the Middle East. You can't be naive to think that after the royal family of Dubai raised good beef, they will eat all of it themselves. That is more than 1 million cattle, and their target of dumping, if there is no accident, must be Europe and the United States. The high-end beef market in Asia has been occupied by Japan. When the time comes, I ask you, who will be the biggest hit? Looking at his son, Luke Shan also said with a smile, Montana and us? After hesitating for a moment, Anthony Shan's eyes lit up. After all, he was not a fool, and he was already in his 40s. He had been in the business world for more than 20 years. He could see very clearly. With just a little bit he would understand. Oh, if we cooperate with Jiang Hai, we can keep our own market share and study the market outside. It's a win-win situation. The most important thing is that we can't figure out the secret of Jiang Hai's fodder now, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it in the future. By then, hearing this, Anthony Shan had completely figured it out. According to the Huaxia people, this is called the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. Hearing what his father said, Anthony Shan also said with a smile. At this time, Jiang Hai didn't know about the wishful thinking of the father and son duo. In fact, even if he knew, he would probably just laugh disdainfully. They wanted to study the secrets of the grass? They are really blind. If they can figure it out, he can give it to them. But the problem is that there is only one Dragon Ball in this world. And that thing is in Jiang Hai's body. Unless they cut Jiang Hai into pieces and study it, it is absolutely impossible. Moreover, with Jiang Hai's current net worth of billions of dollars, the relationship between Jiang Hai and the Walmart Group, the relationship between Jiang Hai and the royal family of Dubai, and the relationship between Jiang Hai and Huaxia, unless Jiang Hai wants to die, no one dares to touch him, especially in terms of personal safety. As for cattle, fish, and grass, they can study it if they want. As long as they don't go against the state agencies, Jiang Hai doesn't care, because he knows that they can't figure it out. And these people don't dare to go against him openly. After all, as they said, Jiang Hai still has the lifeline of their money. In the United States, everything is based on money. No one will go against money, including these people. I didn't intend to introduce this Luke Shan to you, but I heard that you have some trouble recently, so I specially brought them here today. In Texas, their power is still very good. As long as they say a word, those people won't dare to trouble you. After watching Jiang Hai and Luke Shan finish talking, Prawalton came over. No need. Do I need others to take revenge? Hearing Prawalton's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. He originally thought that Prawalton called them here to introduce him to business, but now it seems that she has a deeper meaning. But it's useless to say this now, because Jiang Hai has decided to take revenge himself. Take revenge yourself? How are you going to do it? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton asked with a puzzled look. Hey, wait a minute. Seeing Prawalton's puzzled look, Jiang Hai wanted to say something, but at this moment his phone rang. He picked it up and saw that the person who called was none other than Belle. But at this time, Belle seemed to be in a hurry. He only told Jiang Hai to go to the entrance of the SSR exhibition hall and watch the show, preferably far away, and then hung up the phone. Jiang Hai knows that this guy will definitely not say things without a reason. Let's go, I'll take you to watch the show. Since Belle said that there was a show to watch, Jiang Hai didn't hold back. He smiled and pulled Prawalton away. Regarding Jiang Hai and Prawalton leaving the exhibition hall, whether it was Jiang Hai's people or the people from the Walmart group, they were not surprised, because they all knew that Jiang Hai and Prawalton had a close relationship. Forget about dragging them out. Even if they went to a hotel and booked a room, they would not be surprised. Where are we going? After Jiang Hai pulled her out of the exhibition hall, Prawalton asked in confusion. Follow me and you'll know. After talking to Prawalton, Jiang Hai quickly pulled her to the entrance of the SSR exhibition hall. It had been about half an hour since the last time he left, and in this half an hour, the effect of the drug had just taken effect. Ouch, what's going on? At this time, Roland Shalit was sitting in the lounge, waiting for Willie Barton's news. He suddenly felt a little pain in his intestines. As the saying goes, a stomachache is not an illness, it's just that he didn't poop properly. In addition, he was a little nervous now. At first, he thought that it was because he was nervous, so he wanted to go to the toilet. But later, when he felt his stomach hurt more and more, he felt that he might really need to go to the toilet. How could he care so much? So when his stomach growled again, he stood up and walked out of his room to go to the bathroom. But when he arrived in front of the bathroom, he saw that the bathroom was full of people. Ouch, boss. Do you need to go to the bathroom too? Suddenly, an employee walked over while clutching his stomach. He looked at Roland Shalit and grinned. What's going on? Roland Shalit was a little confused when he saw the employee's reaction. I don't know, it seems like the food we ate this morning wasn't clean. All the employees have diarrhea. This is my 4th time. Ouch, come out quickly. I can't hold it in anymore. When the employee heard Roland Shalit's words, he suddenly squeezed his butt and quickly walked to the bathroom door. He knocked on the door, but the person inside didn't even open it. Yes, Jiang Hai's attack was indiscriminate. The people who drank the bucket of water were mainly the employees of SSR. They prepared bottled water for the guests, because these people weren't ordinary tourists. They were people who might buy their cows, so they naturally treated them well. The bottled water they drank was imported from Europe. The employees weren't allowed to drink the bottled water, so they drank the drugged bucket of water. Roland Shalit was actually quite lucky, because he had been sitting in his office for more than half an hour. But the employees were different. They had to explain and promote to these people, so they wasted a lot of saliva. Naturally, they were thirsty, so they drank more. And the more they drank, the faster they reacted. There was now a long line in front of the bathroom. Looking at these people, Roland Shalit couldn't help but lick his lips. If this was in other countries, if a leader like him wanted to go to the toilet, even if the people inside didn't finish their business, some people would take the initiative to flatter him and give up their seats. However, this was the United States, a country that emphasized human rights. Therefore, no one would give up their seats for him. It was also somewhat embarrassing for him to fight for the bathroom with the employees. However, looking at these people who were having diarrhea, he felt that the idea that he could have held back for a while seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Now, he seemed to be unable to hold it in any longer. He looked around and decided to go to the bathroom in the exhibition hall next door. So he tidied up his suit and walked out of the exhibition hall with a proud face. But at this time, Jiang Hai and Prawalton also came over. They immediately saw Roland Shalit, so they knew each other. He's the one who wants to mess with you. Prawalton pointed at Roland Shalit in surprise. Hey, it's him. Look at my revenge. Hearing Prawalton's words, Jiang Hai smiled, then wrinkled his nose and took a few steps back. His extraordinary sense of smell smelled something that shouldn't be smelled. Although Prawalton didn't smell anything, She also took a step back because she believed in Jiang Hai. At this moment, the sound of a trolley came from a distance, and on the trolley, there was a pile of stinky things emitting a smell. When the pedestrians on the road smelled this smell, they subconsciously moved away, then looked at the cowboy who was pushing the trolley with a puzzled face. Looking at this cowboy, Jiang Hai grinned, because he knew that this cowboy was Belle, but Belle didn't wear his own set of clothes. Instead, he changed into Willie Barton's original clothes, a shabby cowboy suit, and the bandage on his right arm was exactly the same, but the low brim of his hat exposed his existence. Huh. As the trolley got closer and closer, Roland Shalit had just walked out of the exhibition hall when he smelled the stench. Seeing the trolley rushing towards him, he was scared out of his wits, and the trolley was directly pushed towards him. Oh my God! Roland Shalit, who had been focusing most of his energy on fighting against his intestines, screamed in fright when he saw the cart coming towards him. He wanted to run away, but as soon as he moved, he heard a long sound of a flute coming from the lower part of his body, followed by a cracking sound. He felt that his pants had become heavier without him realizing it. More importantly, after eating the croton seeds, the yellow liquid instantly flowed down his trousers. But before anyone could notice that he had been scared out of his wits, Roland Shalit heard a loud sound coming from the lower part of his body, followed by a cracking sound. He felt that his pants had become heavier. More importantly, after eating the croton seeds, the yellow liquid instantly flowed down his trousers. The trolley was already pushed over. Without saying a word, the pile of human, cow, and some unknown creatures, which could not be described because it was too disgusting, was poured directly on his body. Then Jiang Hai saw Belle pretend to be very panicked. After apologizing in a thick Texas accent, he quickly squeezed out of the crowd and disappeared, leaving Roland Shalit standing in the middle of a pile of feces. Roland Shalit was still pooping on the side. For a moment, the smell of himself and the smell of cow dung made everyone in the area run away. The nearby exhibition halls also closed their doors. It was as if Roland Shalit was the only person left in the world. Of course, there were also a lot of surveillance cameras. Willie Barton, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Ugh. Ah. Looking at the pile of excrement on his body, face, and even the corners of his mouth, he shouted loudly while standing in the middle of the pile of excrement. As soon as he opened his mouth, a few flies flew to the right place, causing him to retch instantly. At the same time, he lost his balance and fell in the middle of the pile of excrement. At the same time, new excrement was constantly being created behind him. Ugh, this is your revenge. No, I have to go back first, it's too disgusting. Prawalton looked at the scene in front of her from a distance, her eyes full of surprise. Jiang Hai was really too careless and disgusting. She was about to throw up. Looking at Prawalton running away, Jiang Hai scratched his head. He did not expect the effect to be so good. Chapter 695. To use a phrase from the game, the effect was outstanding, although he didn't know what outstanding meant. Looking at Roland Shalit, who was vomiting and pooping at the same time, Jiang Hai smiled wickedly and returned to his exhibition hall. He felt pretty good about his revenge. After a while, Belle came back and changed back into his own clothes. That Willie Barton had been knocked out by him, and the whole thing had been completed without anyone noticing. Jiang Hai was quite pleased with Belle. Having such a capable general had indeed saved him a lot of trouble. He picked up his phone and transferred $100,000 to Jiang Hai's bank account. It wasn't a payment, but a reward. After all, Jiang Hai wasn't short of money. Although Jiang Hai didn't say it explicitly, Belle naturally knew what the money was about. He smiled at Jiang Hai, and then went back to taking care of the cows. It was said that no man could get rich without a windfall, and no horse could get fat without feeding at night. Right now, Belle probably hoped that more people would come to make trouble for Jiang Hai. Not long after Prawalton came back, he left with his team. They still wanted to check out the other exhibition halls. Without the cow dung in front of the door, a lot of people came to Jiang Hai's exhibition hall this time. It was indeed because Jiang Hai's cows were really good. They didn't need to be dissected, but they could tell that the cows were big, muscular, and had beautiful hair. There was no mucus in their eyes, and they were quite bright. Their teeth were also very well developed, very white and very neat. They didn't have bad breath or stuck teeth. In the eyes of almost all farm owners, such cows were the best breeding cattle. In the eyes of the restaurant owners and butchers, they were extremely precious and good breeds. Yesterday there was a terrible stench. Today there was no smell, and it was indeed much more comfortable. And most importantly, Jiang Hai's cows didn't smell much different. It was almost the same as the smell of a strong man who had just finished playing basketball. There was a slight smell of sweat, but if one wasn't very close to the cows, it would be almost undetectable. As soon as the air circulated, it would disappear. Many people came to Jiang Hai's exhibition hall to ask about the cows. Although Jiang Hai and his team didn't plan to expand their sales and do business with these people, they didn't know who among these people were judges, so they could only receive all of them. Everyone spent the morning busy. At noon, the tourists went to eat, and Jiang Hai ordered takeout. The brand of pizza that Jiang Hai ordered was Fireside Pizza. It was a local pizza brand in Texas, but it was in Dallas. It was also the only one of the 10 best pizzas in the United States that wasn't in New York or Chicago. This was not a very famous old store. It had only been established for about 10 years. In the beginning, it was run in a dilapidated hut in Dallas. Later, the store became very popular and opened many branches. There was one nearby. The pizza in this restaurant was baked by a charcoal stove, and there were many flavors to choose from. The best ones were chicken sausage pizza, spiced roast chicken pizza, prosciutto pizza, and Parmesan pizza. As for the best pizza in the United States, it was in Brooklyn. Pizza Hut, which was famous in China, wasn't even on the list in the United States. Pizza Hut was the best pizza in the United States. The best pizza in the United States was the less famous pizza. Jiang Hai and the others were all big eaters. One person could finish a 13-inch pizza, so these things were not a problem. Jiang Hai ordered pure meat pizzas, prosciutto pizza, and a Texas-style pizza. Although Jiang Hai didn't like the people here, the pizza here was still very good. There was thick beef and thick cheese. As soon as they opened it, the smell of cheese made their noses twitch unconsciously. It was really fragrant and very strong. Grabbing a piece, they didn't need to say much. For large pizzas entered Jiang Hai's, and the other stomachs at a speed visible to the naked eye. Of course, eating pizza was definitely indispensable with cola. Pizza and cola were the real perfect match. After eating and drinking, everyone sat on the chairs and enjoyed this rare leisure time. In the afternoon, it was time to get busy again. However, after Jiang Hai lay down for a while, he remembered that he still had to call Du Feynman. Therefore, he told Robbins Garcia to take a look at the exhibition hall first, before he went to the side to broadcast the news to Du Feynman. There was a time difference between the United States and Dubai. Dubai was 8 hours faster than the United States. Now when Jiang Hai called, it was past 12 o'clock. In Dubai, it was almost 9 o'clock in the evening. Of course, people like Du Feynman wouldn't rest at 9 o'clock in the evening. When Jiang Hai called, he was high. The electronic dance music next to him almost made Jiang Hai's ears hurt. "Hello Jiang, why are you calling me at this time?" Du Feynman said excitedly to Jiang Hai while covering his ears. "Find a quiet place where there is no one and listen to me," Jiang Hai said loudly when he heard Du Feynman's voice. After Du Feynman heard Jiang Hai's words, he heard footsteps and the sound of the door closing. Then, the music on the other side of the phone instantly became softer. At this time, Du Feynman also asked Jiang Hai, "Well, I'm out. What's the matter?" When he heard Jiang Hai's words, he also felt that Jiang Hai should have something to say to him. So it was necessary to listen carefully. "It's like this. Today, a man named Luke Sean came to buy grass from me. He has his own testing center. He said that you sent my grass to his testing center, and even sent it to famous testing centers all over the world. So he knows that the composition of my grass is very unusual. So he came to buy grass from me today. I just want to ask, what do you think? If you don't trust my grass, you can use the testing center of Dubai's royal family. I'm very unlucky that you did this. You know, I don't want too many people to notice me. Hearing that Du Feimin had come to a quiet place, Jiang Hai said slowly. In fact, this matter was indeed a little troublesome for Jiang Hai, but it was not as troublesome as he said. After all, he was still building his brand. However, Du Feimin actually let the grass out. It was no wonder that Jiang Hai scared him. What? I didn't know about this. The grass you gave me. I first sent it to the Royal Testing Center. After the composition was determined, I didn't do any more testing. What's going on? How could it be from my place? Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin was even more surprised. He knew that in this world, Jiang Hai's grass was the most precious treasure in the cattle industry. If Jiang Hai's grass was leaked out, people all over the world would know. Even if it was for the sake of the local reputation, Jiang Hai would not sell the grass to him alone. However, Jiang Hai would not take less money from selling grass. In this case, wouldn't it mean that he was the only one who would suffer losses? Jiang Hai was also aware of this, so he was not in a hurry. He did not have to worry about selling his grass, but Du Feimin was very worried. You can check it yourself. The other party clearly told me that the grass was leaked out from your place. There is a traitor among you. Listening to Du Feimin's panicked words, Jiang Hai did not care whether he was acting or not. He just wanted to scare him. Okay, I understand. I will give you an answer as soon as possible. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin's mood did not seem to be very good. By the way, you'd better stop using helicopters to drive the cows in your ranch. No matter how quiet the helicopter is, it's still noisy. It's easy to frighten the cows and cause them to exercise excessively. In this way, the original marble lines in their bodies will disappear. I think you know what marble lines are, right? They're fat. When the fat turns into lean meat, your cows will be useless. It's better to hire more people than to waste my grass and your cows. After Jiang Hai finished talking about the grass, he casually mentioned the helicopter and the cattle. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Feimin was silent on the other side of the phone. Okay, I understand. Thank you for your reminder, Jiang. You will always be my friend. Du Feimin said seriously after listening to Jiang Hai's words. I am also willing to be the friend of a rich man. You can do as you see fit. Okay, I am hanging up. Listening to Du Feimin's serious words, Jiang Hai also smiled. He knew that Du Feimin would solve this matter himself. After Jiang Hai hung up the phone, Du Feimin's originally gloomy face instantly became even gloomier. Our grass leaked out. Do you know about this? Du Feimin didn't even raise his head as he asked a middle-aged man behind him. This middle-aged man was the head of his bodyguards, or the head of the steward. He usually assisted Du Feimin, so he knew about Du Feimin's affairs, such as the outflow of the pasture. I know a little. Hearing that Du Feimin was his man, this man was also a little flustered. However, his good character made him admit it. Why didn't you tell me if you knew? However, he did not expect that Du Feimin, who was usually very gentle, would suddenly go berserk at this time. He grabbed the ashtray behind him and directly smashed it on the middle-aged man's head. The middle-aged man saw Du Feimin's action, but did not dodge. He allowed Du Feimin to smash his head. In an instant, the ashtray was smashed into pieces. A huge bloody wound appeared on his head. Blood was constantly flowing out, but he did not cover it. Instead, he continued to lower his head. Because this matter was carried out by Mr. Akita Masaki, he said that he did not trust Mr. Zhang's grass, so he needed to find another organization to test it and make a second confirmation. I think this is just a small matter. There is no need to inform you. Hearing Du Feimin's roar, this man continued to speak slowly, as if the person with the wound on his head was not him. Do you know how much money you have caused us to lose this time? That Akita Mango sent the forage grass to the testing institutions all over the world. In other words, the whole world now knows that Jiang Hai's manor has such magical forage grass. The nutrition in it can make beef cows grow marbled meat. Originally, these forage grass were ours, but now it's going to be distributed to the whole world. Do you know what this means? It means that our income has been halved. Even if a beef cow is sold for $50,000, 1,000,000 cows would be $50 billion. And your opinion has caused me to lose $5 million. What do you think now? Grabbing the man's hair, Du Feynman made him look at his face. His eyes were spitting fire, and he really wanted to kill him. Hearing Du Feynman's words, this man could not help but feel a little surprised. He did not expect things to turn out this way. The great Mr. Du Feynman Weha Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum, I didn't know that you were sure this kind of grass would have this kind of effect. In my opinion, Mr. Jiang is more like a swindler than a person we can work with. Looking at Du Feynman, this middle-aged man decided to tell the truth. He also did not think that Jiang Hai's grass would have any effect. Otherwise, he would definitely not have agreed. Are you stupid? Are you stupid? Didn't the testing report of our royal family state clearly? Hearing that this man still dared to talk back, Du Feynman also shouted loudly. He was about to go crazy. That was all money, a lot of money. What if the inspection center's report is wrong? You are the ones who will suffer losses. However, the middle-aged man still didn't think that he had done anything wrong, so he said calmly. Hearing his words, Du Feynman went up and kicked him down. This guy really made him too angry. He really wanted to kill him now. However, although this person was not a member of the royal family, he still had some of the royal family's power. The reason why he followed him was actually because the current chief wanted to keep an eye on him. He could beat him up, but he could not kill him. This was also the thing that made Du Feynman the most angry now. Pass down my order immediately. Get all the grass back. I hope it's not too late. As for Akita Masaki, arrest him for commercial espionage. Those Japanese, arrest all of them. Bastards, bastards, bastards. Stroking his hair, Du Feynman knew that he had to calm down. Now, he had to deal with how to clean up this mess. Jiang Hai's grass was exposed, and it did have some impact on Jiang Hai. However, he did not have to worry about the sales of his grass. But what about his own side? He could have taken all the grass for himself, but now he had to give it up. His heart ached. Chapter 696. For some people, it was very important for everyone to earn money together, and harmony brought wealth. But for some people, they did not need to make money peacefully. They could make their own decisions. For example, the situation in Dubai. Whether it was their tourism industry or their oil, the royal family had the final say in everything. It was that simple. There was no democracy, no one could interfere with them, and there were no messy things. Everything was decided by them. They could not give up any benefits and keep everything for themselves. They had such a habit. It was the same for oil, and it was the same for beef. Since they had already reached an agreement with Jiang Hai, then these things were theirs. It was as simple as that. Now that this news was leaked out, it was almost like taking money out of their pockets. It would be strange if they didn't get angry. Hearing Du Feynman's words, his subordinates immediately took action. At this time, in their desert ranch, Akita Masaki looked at the few pages of reports in his hands. His face was full of disbelief. From the beginning, he did not believe that cows could grow marbled beef after eating Jiang Hai's pasture. Yes, he did not believe it. In fact, no one in their right mind would believe it, especially those who raised cattle themselves. Take Wagyu as an example. It was extremely difficult to make a cow grow marbled patterns, especially beautiful marbled patterns. It almost required 1-to-2, or even 1-to-1 to raise beef cows. The amount of exercise, the speed, the route, and even the posture of the cow every day had to be calculated. At the same time, letting the cow drink red wine was to relax. Giving the cow massages was to make the marbled beef grow according to their imagination. Only such a grown Wagyu could have special marbled patterns. It was also Japan's absolute God-grade beef in the beef industry. It was 5A grade beef. But now someone suddenly came and said that what they were doing was wrong. It was actually very easy to raise marbled beef. They only needed to feed him grass. Which normal person would believe this? They worked so hard to raise their beef, but they couldn't do it just by feeding him grass? Wasn't this bullshit? This was the same as what Qiushan Mengwu knew about the Dali pill in Huaxia. It was definitely a lie. But the biggest problem was that Du Feynman believed this without a doubt. This was awkward. So he had been thinking of ways to expose Jiang Hai. At the end of last month, Jiang Hai's first batch of pasture was sent over. Du Feynman directly asked people to carefully select 200,000 beef cows for testing. As the commander here, It was not difficult for Akita Masaki to get the pasture. Thus, he convinced the people around Du Feimin to send out these forage grasses to the testing centers he knew of. These testing centers were from Japan, Korea, the United States, and even Europe. It was not that he did not believe the test results from Dubai, but it was hard for him to convince himself that it was true. And Du Feimin's follower was actually sent by the royal family to monitor him. After all, before the current chief succeeded to the throne, Du Feimin also had the right of succession, and his position was not low. Moreover, he had also obtained a large amount of wealth from his grandfather and father, so it was very normal to send someone to keep an eye on him. Du Feimin also had no intention of resisting. Bringing someone with him could make the chief feel at ease. In his opinion, this kind of thing actually had more advantages than disadvantages. Compared to political power, he was more interested in doing business. This was also the reason why he did not resist. This person was only in charge of monitoring, but he himself did not know much about beef farming. Compared to Jiang Hai, that arrogant Huaxia person, he preferred an extremely humble Japanese person. So when Akita Masaki said this, he agreed. However, he did not expect that his agreement would almost cost him his life. Du Feimin would not be able to kill him, but if he reported this matter, it would definitely be reported, and then the chief would definitely not spare him. The loss of tens of billions of dollars that year was not something that a small monitor like him could decide. Looking at the test reports in his hand, Akita Masaki roared in disbelief. This is impossible, this is impossible, this is absolutely impossible. How can this guy's pasture be so nutritious? This must be a mistake. These reports were the test reports of the pasture he sent out. The inspectors were also from Japan and Korea, which he trusted the most. But the contents were almost exactly the same as the test reports here in Dubai. This did not mean that Jiang Hai's pasture was good. It just meant that the testing agencies all over the world were all broken, because this was impossible. He just did not believe it. Bang! But just as he was struggling alone here, the door of his room was kicked open, and then a group of Dubai soldiers poured in from the outside. Looking at these Dubai soldiers, Akita Masaki was a little confused. He was very familiar with these Dubai soldiers. According to Du Feimin, these Dubai soldiers were here to protect the safety of this place. After all, there were still some dangers in the desert, but these people who were here to protect were sometimes people who wanted to kill. Mr. Akita, you are temporarily detained because you are suspected of a commercial espionage case. During this time, you can't leave here in our sight. Wait for the Dubai police to come and pick you up. Otherwise, we can't guarantee your safety. Looking at the stunned Akita Masaki, one of these soldiers said to Akita Masaki in a deep voice. Hearing his words, Akita Masaki was also dumbfounded. What the hell is this? Tonight in Dubai was destined to be a sleepless night. Around 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, the Dubai police helicopter flew over the ranch and took away all the Japanese people, including Akita Masaki, and arrested them in the Dubai police station on the charge of commercial espionage. What awaited them was the Japanese. Well, it depended on whether the Japanese were willing to pay for these people. However, the matter of Jiang Hai's pasture was still spread out. Although they immediately pursued it, Dubai only recovered about 30 pasture. These pasture were all from Europe. Europeans looked down on Asians. Huaxia, Japan, and South Korea were the same. Therefore, these European testing agencies did not rush to test the pasture after receiving it. Instead, they were busy with their own matters and would wait until they had time. However, this time made them miss an opportunity to open a new door to the world of beef cattle. On the contrary, the testing agencies of other countries had obtained quite amazing news. Among them, Japan and South Korea were the most active. However, if they wanted to contact Jiang Hai, they would need an opportunity. On the other side, Jiang Hai was very calm. After the phone call, he didn't care about the upheaval in Dubai. It had nothing to do with him. He was still looking after his exhibition hall. There was nothing to do in the afternoon. Jiang Hai was also very happy here. After returning in the evening, he specially celebrated with Cheryl and Prawalton. Today's victory was a little disgusting, but it was really cool. especially when he thought of Roland Shallot's appearance yesterday. Jiang Hai felt so good from head to toe. Especially the scene of him lying in the poop, vomiting and pooping. It was really picturesque. However, on the other side, Roland Shallot really wanted to die at this time. Today he made the biggest scene in his life. After doing that in the morning, he immediately left to take a bath. No, it could be said that he took a bath for the whole day. His skin was about to be scrubbed off, and his hair was about to be washed off, but he still felt as if he was exuding a stench all over his body. In addition, his stomach kept growling. After taking a bath, he immediately went to the toilet. It was really torturous. Until 10 o'clock in the evening, Roland Shallot looked like he had just eaten something he shouldn't have eaten, such as poison or something like that, and then had sex with 10 women. His face was almost peeled off. His whole body was swollen with blisters. His face was dark, his eyes were blue, and his face was pale. To be honest, he didn't even need to put on makeup. If he wanted to shoot a zombie movie, he could directly appear on screen. Dragging his body that was about to fall apart, he slowly made his way to the bed in his room. Then he laid down on the bed. He hadn't eaten or drunk anything for the entire day, and only had diarrhea. When he recalled the scene from this morning, he wanted to vomit again. "Mr. Roland, are you okay? Do you want to go to the hospital?" Looking at his appearance, the female assistant next to him hesitated and asked him. Hearing her words, Roland Shallot shook his head. He wasn't sure if he could walk to the hospital. "Did you find out what happened?" Squinting his eyes, Roland Shallot asked the assistant behind him. What are you talking about?" Hearing his words, the female assistant hesitated for a moment and asked, "Tell me what you found out." Roland Shallot glanced at the female assistant. Usually, Roland Shallot found this female assistant with a big chest very pleasing to the eye. Why was her IQ not enough today? "What do you think I'm asking about?" "Oh, about our employee's diarrhea. The report has come out. It seems to have nothing to do with the bottled water company, because the remaining water was tested. The bacteria in the water did not exceed the limit, and the quality of the water was also fine. We also ruled out the addition of chemical ingredients, so..." Hearing Roland Shallot's slightly dissatisfied words, the assistant immediately said. Hearing her words, Roland Shallot couldn't help but be stunned. He was sure that this matter must be Jiang Hai's doing. Originally, he thought that if it was Jiang Hai who poisoned the water, he would directly call the police to arrest him. But what's the situation now? "No problem. What the F***ck?" Listening to the assistant's words, Roland Shallot couldn't help but say angrily. "We also found Willie Barton, but he doesn't remember how he lost the trolley. He only remembers that when he was pushing the trolley here, someone suddenly hit him on the back of his head, and then he fainted. When he woke up, it was already afternoon." Looking at the report in her hand, the female assistant hesitated for a moment and said to Roland Shallot in front of her, "Who the F***ck? F***ck eat more. This bastard, he must have done it. It must have been him." Hearing that there was no evidence, Roland Shallot was about to go crazy. When did he suffer such a big loss? If it was an ordinary ****, what could he do without evidence? But the problem is that Jiang Hai is not an ordinary ****. This is awkward. It is impossible for him to use his own power to deal with Jiang Hai. After all, this is the United States, a world where everything is about evidence and freedom. If he dares to frame Jiang Hai, of course Jiang Hai is not so easy to frame. But if they are found out, no one can save them. This is the biggest difference between the two, the difference in power. Now even if Roland Shallot knows that today's matter is definitely related to Jiang Hai, there is no evidence. He can't do anything to Jiang Hai. When he thought of this, he felt that he was going crazy. "Tomorrow, go and inform all the cowboys in our company. Tomorrow, we will flood Jiang Hai's exhibition hall with cow dung." After thinking about it, it is impossible to take revenge on Jiang Hai officially, so he has to use his own way. Thinking of his embarrassing appearance today, he couldn't help but gnash his teeth. But when he gritted his teeth, he felt as if there was something in his mouth, and he couldn't help retching. "No, I have to brush my teeth again." Waving his hand, Roland Shallot ran into the bathroom. Looking at Roland Shallot's appearance, The assistant wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. In the end, he went to convey Roland Shallite's order. At this time, Jiang Hai is also prepared for his revenge. In the evening, he specially went to the person in charge of this exhibition and spent $200,000 to strengthen the security around his exhibition hall. This is to prevent the other party from using the same trick as the other day. Jiang Hai is rich, and he is not afraid to compete with others. He doesn't care about money. He just watched Jiang Hai spend $200,000. Naturally, the organizer here has nothing to say. He immediately sent more people to Jiang Hai's exhibition hall. Tomorrow, 40 security guards will be responsible for the security of Jiang Hai's exhibition hall. Since there is no way to coexist peacefully, they will hurt each other. In the blink of an eye, the next morning, after Jiang Hai and the others sent the cows to the exhibition hall, the 40 security guards arrived. Jiang Hai asked Bell to command them while he waited for Roland Shallite to arrive. However, Roland Shallite didn't come, but someone else did. Chapter 697. Mr. Jiang Hai, we meet again. Luke Shan walked over with his son and said to Jiang Hai with a smile, "Oh, you're here." Seeing Luke Shan and Anthony Shan walking over, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. Indeed, he had forgotten about the father and son, but now that he saw them, he remembered and greeted them with a smile. "I wonder what you've thought about what we talked about yesterday?" Luke Shan looked at Jiang Hai and said with a smile. For them, it was very important to be on good terms with Jiang Hai and get Jiang Hai's forage. "Oh, I asked yesterday. I can sell the forage to you, but the price isn't low." Listening to their words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and said seriously. Indeed, he could get a lot of money just by selling grass. Originally, he wasn't too interested in territory, but now, if the business of selling grass was good, then wouldn't he be able to expand his territory? In Winthrop, there were many small and medium-sized ranches around Jiang Hai. If he merged with them and only raised grass instead of cattle, it would be enough for Jiang Hai to make a lot of money. This was also the first time that Jiang Hai had some ideas about territory. "We naturally understand the price. Your forage is a monopoly, so the price is still set by you. As long as it's acceptable, I'll buy it." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Luke Shan said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also thought about it. "I'll also tell you the bottom line. The forage I sold to Du Feynman was $200 per ton, but he was responsible for the transportation. If you're responsible for the transportation, I'll also give you $200 per ton." After thinking for a moment, Jiang Hai said directly to Luke Shan. Of course, Jiang Hai's words were not true. How could Jiang Hai sell the forage to Du Feynman for $200 per ton? It was $150. However, for Luke Shan, it would be a waste if Jiang Hai did not earn his money. He would not be polite to him. Listening to Jiang Hai's price, Luke Shan couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. Ordinary pasture, even the best pasture, would only cost about $12 per ton. After all, this was just pasture, not gold bars. Many northern cities, such as Montana, would also have snow during winter. At this time, the ranches there would need to buy pasture. Otherwise, what would the livestock eat during winter? He had thought that Jiang Hai would only offer 5 times the price, but to his surprise, Jiang Hai demanded $200, which wasn't cheap at all. "Let me do the math for you. Take my Angus cattle as an example. After all, they're small to medium-sized breeds, and each cow eats about 10 to 20 kilograms of fodder a day, which is 3,650 to 7,300 kilograms a year. If you use the price of the fodder, it'll be about $700 to $1,400. But I can guarantee that you'll grow 5% of premium marbled beef. A cow weighs 750 kilograms, and there'll be 450 kilograms left after slaughter. 5% of that is 22.5 kilograms. 1 pound of premium grade A beef is worth nearly $17,000 based on the purchase price, which is $375 per pound. The rest of the beef will also be of premium grade, which is $130 per pound, and definitely won't be any less than that. In that case, you can sell the cow for nearly $50,000, including the skin and other parts. If you're rearing a big cow, the price will be different. But for this cow, you only spent about $1,000 on it, plus a year's worth of labor and fodder from me. Looking at Luke Shawn in front of him, Jiang Hai spoke slowly. He wasn't worried that Luke Shawn wouldn't buy it. He had a monopoly on this kind of forage. What was a monopoly? It meant that he was the only one in the world who had this kind of forage. If Luke Shawn wanted to make more money, he had to cooperate with him. $200. To be honest, this is really expensive, but I can accept this price. But the transportation? To be honest, the transportation of forage isn't cheap. He hesitated for a moment. In fact, as Jiang Hai said, if he could really calculate it that way, an Angus cow could bring him $50,000 in income. After deducting the cost, there would be at least $48,000 left. Luke Shawn himself was a famous rancher in Texas. His cattle were bred by himself, so there was no need to buy them. There was also a pitiful lack of manpower. The cowboys here didn't earn as much as Jiang Hai's cowboys. As for the $700 Jiang Hai said for forage, Luke Shawn didn't believe it. Since he wanted the cows to eat this kind of forage, he would definitely let them eat until they were full. 20 kilograms a day was a must. That didn't mean that his annual consumption would be about $1,400. Other than that, all the money he made here was net profit. After deducting taxes, it seemed that he could make a lot of money. But as a businessman, he had to bargain for everything. This was the most important problem. How about this? As you know, I set up a company called Soaring Dragon. It's mainly to promote the brands in my manor, beef and seafood. But I also do logistics. If you want to buy, I can give you a discount of $5 per ton of forage. You can use my logistics. It's about $205 per ton. I'll help you send it to the big city you specify, and you can send a car to pick it up. Hearing what Luke Shawn said, Jiang Hai decided to give in a little and help his company. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Luke Shawn thought for a moment. Indeed, Jiang Hai's proposal was really tempting. After hesitating for a while, he nodded gently. I can accept this price, and I can also accept using your logistics. But how much of this grass can you provide? Looking at Jiang Hai, Luke Shawn seemed to have made up his mind about something. He said seriously to Jiang Hai, I have nearly 30,000 cows in my manor. Actually, it's more than 20,000 cows. The daily consumption is very important. When I sell the grass that they can't finish. But most of the grass was bought by Du Feynman. Now that I have leftovers, I can probably provide the consumption of 100,000 cows. Seeing that Luke Shawn agreed, Jiang Hai also nodded. He didn't like people who were too long-winded. He didn't have to sell his grass. 100,000 cows. A cow's annual consumption was $1,400. 10,000 cows would be $14 million, and 100,000 cows would be $140 million. Unknowingly, he was going to talk about a big business deal. Unfortunately, this didn't fit Luke Shawn's idea. Can't you sell 100,000 cows? Seeing Luke Shawn shake his head, Jiang Hai knew that he wasn't going to buy everything. Then tell me how many cows. Fortunately, Jiang Hai's mentality was very calm. He didn't care if he couldn't sell the grass for 100,000 cows. Just like what they said, it was just grass. Jiang Hai didn't care much about money. I want 1,000,000 cows. But in the next second, Luke Shawn's words almost killed Jiang Hai. Well, it turned out that he didn't think 100,000 cows was too much. He thought 100,000 cows was too little. He had to admit that this guy was really ambitious. 1,000,000 cows. Wasn't that about the same size as Du Feynman's ranch? It seemed that this guy was really rich. At least, he wasn't someone Luke could compare to. No, I'm really sorry. I only have 100,000 cows. I'll go back and think of a way. If I can squeeze out some more, I'll give it to you. After hearing Luke Shawn's words, Jiang Hai shook his head. 100,000 cows were already a lot. 1,000,000 cows? Hee. Although he might be able to get so much grass, Jiang Hai felt that he would have some trouble in the future if he gave Luke so much grass. Jiang Hai didn't really want to raise cows now. He felt that he would become rich just by selling grass. After all, those cows only made a few $1 billion a year. If he sold grass, Jiang Hai felt that his annual income might reach several $1 billion. But fortunately he still thought about it. He shook his head and rejected Luke Shawn's proposal. That's a pity. 100,000 cows it is. This is also the initial tentative cooperation between us. I hope we can cooperate happily. Seeing Jiang Hai reject him, Luke Shawn couldn't help but think highly of Jiang Hai. He knew that Jiang Hai sold 1 million cows of grass to Du Feimin, and he was sure that the price he offered was higher than Du Feimin's. In such a situation where there was money to be made, he still insisted on his contract spirit. This was commendable. It was also because of this that he thought highly of Jiang Hai. This man could remain calm in the face of money. He was really good. But in fact he was thinking too much. The reason why Jiang Hai didn't transfer Du Feimin's quantity to him was that Jiang Hai's most important life-saving oil futures were obtained from Du Feimin. Secondly, he believed that Du Feimin would also raise the price once the price was announced. When did the Dubai tycoon care about such trivial matters? What a joke. Happy cooperation. Seeing that Luke Shawn agreed, Jiang Hai shook hands with him, and then said with a chuckle, the next thing would be left to the lawyers of both sides to discuss. Jiang Hai called Moses Adams. After learning about the contract of $100 million a year, Moses Adams also expressed his intention to come as soon as possible. He knew that Jiang Hai wouldn't treat him badly after negotiating such a business deal. At the same time, he also brought people from Soaring Dragon Logistics, which was another expansion project of Soaring Dragon Logistics. Of course, this was all for later, and had nothing to do with the current situation. Jiang Hai, come out! But at this time, something related to Jiang Hai happened. For example, Roland Schalater finally came. As soon as he reached an agreement with Luke Shawn, there was a commotion outside the exhibition hall. After hearing this sound, Jiang Hai walked out of the exhibition hall to take a look. At this time, outside the exhibition hall, the security guards were already fighting with the people brought by Roland Schalater. Normally, when the security guards saw the cart full of cow dung, they would have already run away. Who would fight them head-on? But yesterday, Jiang Hai spent $200,000 to find these people. Although the organizer and the security company received $50,000, the remaining 20 people knew that if they could withstand the cow dung attack, they could get $5,000. $5,000 a month was considered a middle-class family in the United States. Not to mention that it was only for one day. So even if they knew that it was cow dung, even if they knew that the smell was strong, they still rushed up and pushed the cowboys, not letting them pass. Seeing that his men couldn't break through the defensive line, Roland Schalater was filled with hatred and anger. At this time, he was much better than last night. After taking a shower, he went to a nearby private hospital to get an 4-drip and take anti-diarrhea medicine. Although his condition was still not very good, at least he could stand here now. Looking at Jiang Hai coming out, he really hated him to the core. Roland Schalater felt that yesterday was the most humiliating day in his life. He had never been so humiliated before, and probably would never be again. Now that he saw the culprit, Jiang Hai, come out, he almost went crazy. Oh, it's you. You're so free, coming here early in the morning. Looking for trouble? Looking at the cowboys and trolleys that were blocked outside, Jiang Hai looked at Roland Schalater with a smile on his face. The conflict here naturally attracted a lot of people's attention, but because the cow dung was so smelly, not many people came to watch. Only the security guards and the cowboys still insisted. You bastard! You dare to say that what happened yesterday had nothing to do with you? Pointing at Jiang Hai, Roland Schalater roared angrily. Oh, I don't understand what you're talking about. Looking at the angry Roland Schalater, Jiang Hai gently picked his ear and said with an annoying face. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Roland Schalater was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He had completely forgotten what kind of attitude he had yesterday. Jiang Hai, at most, could be regarded as restoring his situation yesterday. You don't understand? Okay, I'll let you understand. Let's go. Looking at Jiang Hai's indifferent face, Roland Schalater roared. As his voice fell, the cowboys on the other side began to exert their strength, trying to break through the security circle. Stop them, but fortunately Bell's reaction was faster. He also shouted loudly, and the cowboys and security guards on both sides fought again. "Okay, what are you guys doing?" But at this moment, suddenly a familiar voice sounded behind Jiang Hai, and then Jiang Hai saw Luke Shan coming out with a gloomy face. When he saw Luke Shan, Roland Shalliter's face also showed a look of disbelief. He never thought that Luke Shan would be here. Chapter 698. Looks like Luke Shan is just like what Pulla Walton said. He has quite a reputation here. Looking at Luke Shan, who stood in front of him and made everyone silent, Jiang Hai whispered in his heart. Then, he took a step back and handed the venue over to Luke Shan. Now he would be in charge of it. "Mr. Shan." Looking at Luke Shan, Roland Shalit hesitated for a moment, then called out. If his SSR company was a giant in the eyes of the cowboy, then Luke Shan was a giant in their eyes. He was so big that they could hardly compete with him. As soon as Luke Shan came out, Roland Shalit was confused. He couldn't understand how Jiang Hai got involved with Luke Shan. Shouldn't this purist Texan be on their side? "Mr. Jiang Hai, I'm sorry for scaring you." Luke Shan looked at Jiang Hai and nodded. "It's okay. If you know these people, then I'll leave this place to you." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai smiled, then waved his hand. Bell left with the security guards. But this time, no one stopped the cowboys, and they didn't dare to push the cow dung forward. They had heard of Luke Shan before. "You're a disgrace to Texas. Get out of here." Looking at the cowboy in front of him, Roland Shan shouted. After hearing Roland Shan's words, the cowboy glanced at Roland Shan. After finding that Roland Shan didn't say anything, they left dejectedly. "Are you kidding me? Is your life more important than your money?" Of course, Luke Shan wouldn't kill them. But if they offended Luke Shan in Texas, would they still be able to survive here? Compared to their future jobs, the second half of their lives, the small amount of money that Roland Shalit had given him, plus his own anger, had long disappeared. Originally, in their eyes, Jiang Hai was just an ordinary foreigner with some money, but they couldn't understand how Jiang Hai connected with Luke Shan. This was really a bit puzzling, but it didn't mean that they dared to disobey Luke Shan's words. After hearing Luke Shan's words, and seeing that Roland Shalit didn't say anything, they all left with their tails between their legs. In an instant, only Luke Shan, his son Anthony Shan, and Roland Shalit were left on the street. Luke Shan looked at Roland Shalit, then slowly walked in front of him with his son. "Mr. Shan." Roland Shalit looked at Luke Shan and swallowed hard, then said anxiously, "You don't need to tell me this, I only believe what I see. Now immediately apologize to Mr. Jiang Hai, or SSR Corporation will change owners." Luke Shan waved his hand at Roland Shalit, stopping him from speaking. He said in a serious tone, "What? Mr. Shan, you can't." Listening to what Luke Shan said, Roland Shalit said with a horrified expression, "Now immediately, do you need me to say anything else?" Unfortunately, Luke Shan didn't give him a chance to explain. When Luke Shan talked to Jiang Hai, he was very polite because Jiang Hai could bring him profits. Like Jiang Hai said, he provided fodder for 100,000 cows. Excluding the money that Jiang Hai earned, the cows were worth about $5 billion. After selling them and paying the taxes, he would have at least $3 billion left. How much was SSR Corporation's total market value? Not to mention 100,000 cows now. What about 200,000 cows in the future? 300,000 cows? 1 million cows? How many SSR corporations could he buy? This guy actually dared to offend Jiang Hai. He was simply courting death. Luke Shan didn't ask why things turned out this way, nor did he ask what the cause and effect was. He only knew that he couldn't be cut off from his source of income. He had to obtain Jiang Hai's forgiveness. Roland Shalit couldn't help but be dumbfounded as he looked at Luke Shan. Tears kept welling up in his eyes. Roland Shalit was not a sissy, nor was he a man with a weak heart, but he really felt wronged at this moment. Why did he have to apologize after being messed with so badly yesterday? There was no justice in this world. Roland Shalit couldn't say anything else as he looked at the aggressive Luke Shan in front of him. But it was impossible for him to apologize. In the end, he broke down and ran outside after screaming, "Father, should I call the people from SSR Corporation to apologize?" Watching Roland Shalit leave, Anjine Shan frowned and said to Luke Shan. Hearing his words, Luke Shan narrowed his eyes. He looked back at Jiang Hai's exhibition hall and found that Jiang Hai wasn't there. It seemed that his sincerity wasn't enough. I'll leave it to you. Luke Shan looked at his son and said faintly. He patted his son's shoulder and walked into Jiang Hai's exhibition hall. He saw Jiang Hai sitting there playing with his phone and walked over with a smile. Luke Shan looked at Jiang Hai with a smile and said slowly to Jiang Hai, "The matter outside has been resolved. I'll give Mr. Jiang Hai a satisfactory answer. It's my fault for letting Jiang Hai have such unpleasant memories here. If there's time, I'll bring Mr. Jiang Hai around to have some fun. What do you think?" He was very interested in Jiang Hai. To be exact, he was interested in Jiang Hai's pasture and the formula of the pasture. It was impossible for anyone who was close to Jiang Hai to not be interested in Jiang Hai's secrets. However, if Jiang Hai didn't say anything, they couldn't get to the bottom of it. If they really made Jiang Hai angry, it would be disastrous. Go out to have fun. Forget it. I need to focus more on the competition. I'll have to wait for the next opportunity. Looking at Luke Shan in front of him, Jiang Hai wasn't going to go out and play with him. Who knows if he has any traps or something like that. Jiang Hai was more focused on the beef cattle show. His goal was to get first place. If that's the case, then it's really a pity. But Mr. Jiang Hai's cow is really amazing. I wish Mr. Jiang Hai a good ranking in this beef cattle exhibition. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't want to go, Luke Shan didn't force him. After all, he knew that he wasn't very familiar with Jiang Hai, so he said with a smile, "Thank you for your kind words." Looking at Luke Shan, Jiang Hai responded with a smile. After the two exchanged a few words, Luke Shan also left. After they left, only Luke Shan returned home. As for Anthony Shan, he went to the SSR company. Just like they said, this matter wasn't over yet. The SSR company was very careful with Anthony Shan's arrival. After knowing the purpose of Anthony Shan's visit, SSR's largest shareholder, Babbitt Shalit, wanted to kill his little bastard. After sending Anthony Shan off, he immediately called Roland Shald. Ignoring the aggrieved Roland Shald on the other side of the phone, Babbitt Shald went to Jiang Hai's exhibition hall and apologized to Jiang Hai on behalf of SSR. He also made a promise that if Jiang Hai needed anything in the future, they would be willing to do it for him. Moreover, he also paid for the 200,000 yuan security guard for Jiang Hai, so Jiang Hai couldn't say anything about it. Even though he wasn't a good person, he wasn't a bad person either. A middle-aged man in his 50s acted like a grandson in front of him, giving him promises and money in exchange for his forgiveness. Jiang Hai didn't know what to say. What's more, in the end, he was the one who benefited. Recalling Roland Shald's appearance yesterday, Jiang Hai was naturally very magnanimous to forgive them. As the male lead, Jiang Hai naturally had to have a certain amount of magnanimity. Cough, although it felt fake no matter how he said it. 3 days later, the judges hidden in the crowd reported the results of the competition to their superiors. The organizers were transparent about this. Although they didn't know who the judges were, the top 64 steeds were posted on their website. Jiang Hai's 3 steeds were all on the list: Soaring Dragon number 1, Soaring Dragon number 2, and Soaring Dragon number 3 were ranked 17th, 25th, and 31st respectively. All of them had entered the competition. Jiang Hai's steeds weren't ranked high, because they were the most common Angus steeds, which were very common in the United States. Angus steeds were small and medium-sized breeds. At least in terms of appearance, they weren't as beautiful as the average Wagyu steeds. Plus, it was the first day, so Jiang Hai's stakes weren't ranked low, but they weren't ranked high either. After the 3rd day, early in the morning of the 4th day, the competition venue was no longer in the exhibition hall. Instead, it was in the big exhibition hall of the beef cattle exhibition. There, Jiang Hai's 3 cows were placed together with the other cows in the top 64 for close comparison. This was also very cruel. When people looked at cows, they would judge them based on their own impressions. But now Jiang Hai's cow was really different. His cow was very docile, not violent, and not frightened. But when other cows saw Jiang Hai's cow, they would subconsciously retreat. This was because they felt the pressure from Jiang Hai's cow. Jiang Hai's cow was very strong. His cow was very gentle, it was not violent, and it would not be frightened. That soft fur was different in comparison. Those eyes that were full of spirituality were also different in comparison. After entering the big exhibition hall, Jiang Hai's steeds instantly became the star of the exhibition hall. Naturally, a large number of people gathered here to observe Jiang Hai's steeds. There were judges from the organizer, merchants who wanted to buy steeds, and even some people from companies. They were also very interested in Jiang Hai's steeds. It would be good to buy such a good steed. Some other people looked at Jiang Hai's steeds helplessly, especially the Cartwright Company, which had a grudge against Jiang Hai. This time, they came to participate in the National Beef Cattle Exhibition. They were lucky to catch the last bus. One of their steeds was in the top 60. After all, in the United States, there was a big gap between the animal husbandry standards of the East and the West. It was good enough that they could enter the top 64, while representing the states in the Northeast. However, Jiang Hai's steeds really made them have no hope of catching up. The Fat Dragon Manor over there is in Winthrop. Isn't that your territory? Looking at Jiang Hai's 3 cattle seats in the distance, there were a lot of people crowded in front of them. Far away at the tail of the Cartwright Company, there was no one there. Rosalind Cartwright, who had a conflict with Jiang Hai, was sitting on a chair at this time. Looking at the crowd on Jiang Hai's side, he heard a voice. "Oh, it's you. They have a good way to raise steeds. We can't do anything about it." Rosalind Cartwright raised his head and looked at the person who spoke. He shrugged lightly and said indifferently, "Yes, since they lost last time, they had given up. At least in the matter of raising steeds, they had no way to compete with Jiang Hai. But fortunately, no matter how strong Jiang Hai was, he only represented his ranch. He occupied the high-end steakhouse near New York, but he disdained to occupy the intermediate and low-level markets. Therefore, although the Cartwright Company suffered a lot of losses, it was still profitable overall. It was just that the gap between the two was getting bigger and bigger. Last year at the New York Beef Show, when they saw that Jiang Hai's steeds were so popular, they still wanted to compete. But now they had completely given up. Giving up so easily isn't the Rosalind Cartwright I know. Looking at the resigned Rosalind Cartwright in front of him, the man took a chair and sat beside him, looking at Jiang Hai and his steeds in the distance. Upon hearing his words, Rosalind Carlyle couldn't help but mock himself. Give up. If it was so easy to give up, he wouldn't say anything. But now the reality was that it was impossible to not give up, because Jiang Hai's strength was beyond their understanding. Chapter 699. Do you know anything about Jiang Hai and his Soaring Dragon Manor? Rosalind Cartwright couldn't help but ask the man next to him. Oh, I don't know much about it. Hearing his words, the man froze for a moment, then smiled and said, Since you don't know, I'll give you an introduction. You just asked me why I should accept my fate? What can I do if I don't accept my fate? Let me tell you, all of his cows have a full slaughter rate, and the proportion of the beef that is slaughtered is as high as 20%. In other words, for a cow that is more than 700 kilograms, he can slaughter about 500 kilograms of meat, and among the meat, the special grade is as high as 100 kilograms. What can you not give up? Rosalind Cartwright looked at Jiang Hai in the distance and said with a bitter face, 20% of the special grade meat production rate. How can people live? Is there any way to have fun? 20%? Haha, that's really scary. However, you are the local tyrants of those states. Have you ever thought about controlling 20% of the technology in your own hands? Gazing at Rosalind Cartwright's hopeless expression, the man said with a smile. Upon hearing his words, Rosalind Cartwright couldn't help but let out a self-deprecating laugh. How could they not have thought about this? The big fish ate the small fish, and the small fish ate the shrimps. Such a law of survival was natural, and it was also natural in the American business world. After they lost to Jiang Hai, they thought about this idea. They had sent people to contact Jiang Hai's people openly and secretly, wanting to know the secret of Jiang Hai's cows. However, Jiang Hai was quite good to his cowboys. He had a good relationship with them, and he gave them a lot of money. Naturally, no one would betray him. Not to mention the trust between people. Just the money they gave was definitely not enough to move them. Their annual salary in Jiang Hai's manor was $20,000 to $30,000. This was indeed not much, but the annual bonus was as high as more than $1 million. With an annual income of nearly $2 million, how could they betray Jiang Hai? One had to know that this was only 1 year. In 10 years, it would be 20 million. In 20 years, it would be 40 million. Of course, they still had to pay taxes. However, with this amount of money, ordinary bribes didn't exist here. Therefore, the Cartwright company was given the cold shoulder at the beginning. Later, when Jiang Hai contacted the Walmart group, he did not dare to touch him. As for now, Jiang Hai didn't just rely on the Walmart group. He also had a lot of power himself. The Cartwright company had no chance. Fortunately, Jiang Hai only occupied the top market. He wasn't interested in the middle and lower market. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. I don't know what you're thinking. I'll just pretend that you didn't say that to me today. It's impossible for us to deal with Jiang Hai, let alone be used by others. We're convinced by Jiang Hai's strength. It's that simple. Looking at the man in front of him, Rosalind Cartwright said with a serious face. He had met Jiang Hai. Otherwise, he would still have some ability. At least, he was very clear about the purpose of this guy's visit. The bird that sticks out gets shot. Of course, if the bird that sticks out gets enough benefits, it wouldn't matter. However, if he knew that he couldn't get any benefits, he would still stick out. He wasn't stupid. Oh, that's a pity. Hearing Rosalind Cartwright admit defeat, the man shrugged his shoulders helplessly. Then he left with a smile and went to his exhibition hall. Yes, this man was also one of the exhibitors of today's livestock exhibition. This man's manor was also in Texas. However, unlike ordinary Texas ranches, he raised Wagyu cattle here. Wagyu cattle were the exclusive beef cattle of Japan. In fact, many countries around the world raised Wagyu cattle, because Wagyu cattle were also divided into different grades. In Japan, Wagyu cattle were divided into many kinds according to different regions. There were Xinjiang cattle, Kobe cattle, Danma cattle, Songbang cattle, Feiho cattle, Miyazaki cattle, Saga cattle, and Misawa cattle. Among them, the most famous were Danma cattle and Songu cattle. Danma cattle were originally draft cattle. However, in 1898, the Japanese government improved from draft cattle to beef cattle. They became the ancestors of the three major Japanese Wagyu cattle: Songu cattle, Kobe cattle, and Miyazaki cattle. However, the latter two were actually not that high in grade. Generally, if people in Europe and America wanted to raise Wagyu cattle, they would import cattle from Japan, which was the latter two. The real Songu cattle couldn't be exported from Japan. The real Songu cattle were the most expensive type of cattle. At first, Songu cattle referred to the cattle raised in Mekong County, Japan. Later, it became the standard of beef cattle. Until now, it was a kind of beef cattle's grade and a way to raise them. The beef cattle in Japan were divided into 15 grades. Only the top 2 grades were called Songu cattle. Danma cattle were bought back and transported to an area in the center of Songu in the south of Yinchuan and north of Miyazaki in Mekong County for 3 years, when they were 8 to 9 months old. Unmated cows would be sent to the market for grading and auction when they reached the standard weight. Therefore, this kind of cattle was more of a symbol, not a live cattle that could be bought by outsiders. But this person was different. The cattle he used this time was a Matsusaka cattle, and it looked quite good. Although it was a castrated bull, it was a good choice in terms of size and appearance. There must be a lot of onlookers. From this point of view, it was obvious that this person had a very close relationship with Japan. How is it going? Looking at this person walking back, a yellow man walked over from the tourists near his booth and asked this person in strange English, "Matsui-kun, the situation seems to be a bit bad. There are very few people here who dare to fight with that person." Hearing the yellow man's words, the white man here glanced at Jiang Hai from afar, then said slowly. It seemed that he had found a lot of people, but the situation wasn't too good. It's understandable. Yesterday, Luke Shan made it clear that he was on Jiang Hai's side. The cowboys and ranchers in Texas naturally don't dare to fight against Jiang Hai. The cowboys and ranchers in Montana have no interest in Jianghai. Although they are very curious about that technology, they are too far away. Even if there are benefits, they can't get it. In the end, the Carlite Company, which has the best chance to get that technology, has now admitted defeat. They really have no other way. Think of a way. Our country is quite interested in its technology. It doesn't need to be carefully raised to reach 20% top-grade beef. Our country is determined to get it. Also, we are quite interested in the cultivation method of that grass. As long as you can find a way to get it done, you can have as much Matsusaka beef as you want. Looking at the person in front of him, the Japanese man said with a smile, "Yes, I will study it." Hearing the Japanese man's words, the white man also chuckled with a smile on his face. But he has other thoughts in his mind. If he really gets Jianghai's method of cultivating beef cattle and grass, will he give it to the Japanese? What a joke. At that time, he will be the next Jianghai, and he will do better than Jianghai. He will become the king of beef cattle in this world. He has to admit that although Jianghai is strong enough, he doesn't have enough ambition. He is too casual. At this time, Jianghai doesn't know that he has been targeted by a thief. At this time, he is taking care of his cows. In this way, the fourth day of the exhibition ended quickly. After the comparison and demonstration, Jianghai's steak reputation was indeed somewhat unshakable. Especially the booths on both sides of him. They were about to curse. Without comparison, there would be no harm. Now they were very hurt. On the evening of the fourth day, a new round of rankings was updated. Out of the 64, only 32 were left. On the fifth day, 16 would advance to 16. On the sixth day, 16 would advance to 8. On the last day, the final 8 would decide the king of beef. This time, the Texas Livestock Exhibition has a total of 4 awards. 1 gold award, 2 silver awards, 4 bronze awards, and the Appearance Award. Apart from the Appearance Award, which was not very reliable, it was probably prepared for the big companies that didn't win any awards. A total of 8 cows could win an award. In other words, if they entered the final day, they would basically be guaranteed a bronze award. There was only an eighth of a chance. After the fourth day of the exhibition ended, the rankings of Jianghai's 3 cows rose again. This time, Jianghai's Soaring Dragon 2 ranked the highest 5th, Soaring Dragon 1 ranked the 8th, and Soaring Dragon 3 ranked the 11th. It has to be admitted that in terms of size, the Angus cows were indeed at a disadvantage. Looking at the Charolais cows, Limousin cows, and other large breeds of cattle, one of them could grow to 1.5 tons. For example, the Simmental cows and Hayford cows could grow to more than 1 ton. Even the Wagyu cows could grow to about 1 ton. Compared to these cows, the Angus cows were indeed not at an advantage in terms of size. The maximum weight of 750 kilograms made the Angus cows look like little chicks among these big cows. It was precisely because of this that Jianghai's steak was not so famous. If possible, Jianghai wanted to raise some large beef cows. However, if he wanted to raise large beef cows, he would have to sell all the cows in the manor. Jianghai was reluctant to do so. Speaking of which, when Robbins Garcia first said that he wanted to raise Angus cows, Jianghai did not understand. If he did, he could have raised something else. Come to think of it, he could not finish the pasture in his manor anyway. If he had raised Limousin cows back then, he would have. A bull could grow to 1.5 tons. With a slaughter rate of 65%, it would be 975 kilograms of meat. If 20% of it was premium grade beef, it would be 195 kilograms. If 1 kilogram sold for $700, the meat alone would be worth $136,500. Of course, this was all in hindsight. Moreover, Jianghai did not know that his aura, oh no blood, had such a great improvement effect on beef cows. Of course, if he had wanted to buy Limousin cows back then, Robbins Garcia and the others would not have agreed. This was because the taste of this kind of cow was actually not very good. Although it grew quickly and could grow to more than 800 kilograms in 12 months, the problem was also very serious. This cow grew quickly and had a lot of muscle, but little fat. What did marbling mean? It was fat. High-grade beef would grow with less fat. This kind of cow could only be killed from an 8-month-old calf to produce marbled beef. However, an 8-month-old calf was actually about the same as an Angus cow. That was what Robbins Garcia thought back then. Of course, Jiang Hai himself did not particularly care about this. It was not that he had a problem with money, nor was he a saint. It was just that he liked Angus cows. This kind of cow was very quiet and not irritable. It was indeed very suitable for raising. If he raised other large cows, he would need more cowboys than just Robbins Garcia and the others. He would need at least 5 times more cowboys to take care of them. There were too many people. And if something troublesome happened, it would be even more annoying. After easily entering the top 32 on the 5th day, Jiang Hai's Soaring Dragon Manor could be considered to have opened up some reputation. On the 5th day of the exhibition, there were even some people who asked about the Soaring Dragon Manor's beef. After learning that it was exclusively for Walmart and Haisheng supermarkets, it was not difficult for people to associate it with the special grade beef that these 2 supermarkets were still selling. It seemed that this beef should be from Jiang Hai's hands. Immediately, many people came over to hand over their business cards and exchange phone numbers. On the 5th day, Jiang Hai's place was even more lively than on the 4th day. Perhaps it was because of his reputation, but at the end of the 5th day, when the scores were announced, Jiang Hai's 3 cows were once again promoted to a higher level. The first place Soaring Dragon number 2 had risen to the 3rd place, becoming a seated contestant. Soaring Dragon number 1 replaced Soaring Dragon number 2 in the 5th place, while Soaring Dragon number 3 moved to the 7th place. The 3 cows entered the top 16 together. And this ranking was the same on the 6th day. It didn't change. At least until the last day of the show. No matter how good the Angus beef was, there was no way it could challenge the top 2 positions. In the end, after the 6th day of the show, Jiang Hai's 3 beef cows all entered the final 8. The final rankings were 3rd, 5th, and 7th. In addition to his 3 cows, there were 5 other cows. Among them, 3 from Texas and 2 from Montana had made it to the finals. All the cows from other regions had been eliminated. Of course, because this was the National Beef Cattle Exhibition, it did not accept registrations from other regions and companies. Therefore, companies from Australia and Japan, which were also big cattle farmers, did not participate. These 8 cows could be said to be in the top 8 in the United States. Chapter 700. Tomorrow is the finals. Are you nervous? Prawalton let Jiang Hai's head rest on her chest as she pressed Jiang Hai's shoulder and whispered. These days, Jiang Hai was really busy. Of course, this so-called busy was not physically busy, but mentally busy. Every day, too many people came to Jiang Hai to ask if he sold his beef cattle, or if Jiang Hai's technology was for sale. Jiang Hai was annoyed to death listening to them. But after all, he was still participating in the exhibition. Jiang Hai could not lose his temper. He could only say over and over again that he was not for sale. After hearing this, the other party's reaction was different. Some of them were more particular. When they heard that Jiang Hai was not for sale, they left directly, but some people were not so particular. No matter which country, there would be some arrogant bastards. So some people began to threaten Jiang Hai by saying that they were from some company. They asked Jiang Hai to be more careful, or they pretended to be pitiful and asked Jiang Hai to give them some shares. Otherwise, they would lose their jobs when they go back. For these people who threatened him, he directly asked the security to throw them away. As for those who pretended to be pitiful, he directly drove them away and ignored them. Jiang Hai only came to win the award. He did not intend to sell these cattle. Because of this, Jiang Hai also offended a lot of people these days. However, from the beginning, Jiang Hai's goal was these low-end businessmen, so he did not care about offending them. I'm not nervous, but I'm a little excited. Let's get it done quickly. After that, I can go back and rest for a few days. Prawalton turned his head and gently rubbed Prawalton's plump body. His hair made Jiang Hai itchy. She couldn't help but pat him, and then glanced at him. Feeling Prawalton's action, Jiang Hai also smiled, but when he was smiling, he suddenly took a deep breath. Did I hurt you? Sensing Jiang Hai's movements, Cheryl Lee, who was currently lying between Jiang Hai's legs and nibbling with her upper body, couldn't help but stop. After spitting out something that shouldn't be described, she looked at Jiang Hai worriedly. "It's okay, it's very comfortable." Looking at Cheryl Lee's gaze, Jiang Hai said with a chuckle. "That's good." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Cheryl Lee lowered her head once again and began to busy herself with her work. "Sigh, time really flies. Tomorrow is the finals, and then we have to go back the day after. After we go back, we have to go to the company and start working. There are still 2 days to spend time with you." Looking at Jiang Hai in her arms, Prawalton suddenly felt a little reluctant. She had been with Jiang Hai for so long. To be honest, she didn't know what kind of feelings she had for Jiang Hai. She didn't understand Jiang Hai's feelings for her, but her desire to stay with Jiang Hai was getting stronger day by day. But every time this thought popped up, she would suppress it because she knew that it was impossible for her and Jiang Hai to be together. "As long as you want, you can live in my villa at any time. Your room will always be there." Listening to Prawalton's words, Jiang Hai also looked at her. Jiang Hai didn't know how he felt about this woman, but if she wanted to come, Jiang Hai would definitely welcome her. "Forget it. I don't want to be tied to a tree like you. You have to know that I still have a big family to feed. Hee hee. And those little girlfriends of yours, won't they kill me when the time comes?" Chili finally left, and I'm going again. Haha, well, let's not talk about these sad topics. Let's cherish the remaining 2 days. Prawalton glanced at Jiang Hai and said in a relaxed manner. Then she kissed Jiang Hai's lips. The fire of war unknowingly ignited in the room again. The night was silent. The next morning, Jiang Hai and the others had already gone to the cowshed and took the 3 finalists to the slaughterhouse. Beef competitions were different from bullfighting competitions and dogfighting competitions. Speaking of which, it was a bit cruel. It was a beef competition. What were they competing for? Meat. If they didn't kill the cattle, they would never know how good the meat was. So in all beef cattle competitions, except for bullfighting, they had to kill the cattle to see how good the meat was. Jiang Hai's cattle was naturally the same. Fortunately, he was already mentally prepared, so he didn't feel sad. Early in the morning, which was probably around 5 o'clock, Jiang Hai and the others took the 3 cattle to the designated slaughterhouse. They watched the butchers kill the cattle, peel the skin, and remove the internal organs. As for the meat removal process, they had to wait until they were on the stage. They had already experienced this once at the New York Beef Cattle Show. However, when they were skinning the cattle, the butchers couldn't help but sigh. The skin of Jiang Hai's cattle was really amazing. So the butcher deliberately came out and told Jiang Hai that he bought the 3 skins for $3,000. Jiang Hai didn't bargain. He had no use for the 3 skins, so he sold them to the butcher. With the 3 skins, the butcher watched the butchers kill the cattle more carefully. Before 8 o'clock in the morning, the 3 cattle were skinned and their internal organs were cleaned, but the cattle were still whole. After they were processed, they were sent to the exhibition. At this time, the exhibition had been turned into a large stage to display every slaughtered cow. According to the order, the first one to go up was the 8th cow. This cow came from Montana and was called the Hall Livestock Company. It was said to be a first-class livestock company in Montana, but it was only in the middle of the first class. It wasn't the best. Montana and Texas were like 2 opposing forces. The Montana cowboys looked down on the Texas cowboys, and the Texas cowboys looked down on the Montana cowboys. Therefore, even if the 2 countries held a national competition, the top companies on both sides wouldn't participate. Only the mid-tier companies would participate. But even so, Montana had 2 nominees, which showed that they were quite strong. Montana is one of the 2 most developed areas in the United States in terms of animal husbandry. It's really good, but I don't think there's much hope for this cow. At the side of the screen, Robbins Garcia and Jiang Hai stood together. Looking at the cow on stage, he couldn't help but whisper, "This cow looks good, but I don't know why, but it feels weird." Looking at the cow being carried on stage, Jiang Hai also said to Robbins Garcia, although he wasn't very proficient in raising cows, at least he had trained his eyesight a little. "This is a Charolais cow. It can be said to be a textbook Charolais cow. Its bones are strong. Its limbs are strong. Its head is small and wide. Its horns are long and round. Its neck is short and thick. Its chest is wide and deep. Its ribs are square and round. And its back is wide and thick. But there's a problem. Charolais cows are originally cows with more lean meat. So the meat of this cow won't be too bad. But it's still very difficult to kill a large amount of premium grade beef. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia also spoke seriously. While he was speaking, the host on the stage was also speaking. What he said was almost the same as what he said. Of course, he didn't say the last sentence. After all, before the cow was solved, the host couldn't interfere too much. A few big men went on stage with meat carving knives and began to cut the Charolais cow. One has to admit that the people hired by the organizer are all good. It didn't take long for the cow on the stage to be almost finished. At the same time, there were also appraisers who came to check the meat. After about half an hour, the cow was completely cut open. The host also reported the situation of this Charolais cow. The net weight of this Charolais cow was 1,200 kilograms, and the total weight of the meat after slaughter was 816 kilograms. The slaughter rate was 68%, which was quite good. The premium grade beef was 16 kilograms, which was 2%. The special grade beef was 220 kilograms, which was 27%. The preferred grade beef was 351 kilograms, which was 43%. The standard grade beef was 135 kilograms, which was 16%. The commercial grade beef was 41 kilograms, which was 5%. The other 4% was usable grade beef, and the 3% was minced grade beef, which was not included in the calculation. Jiang Hai listened to the host's price and calculated in his heart. The premium grade beef was $700 per kilogram, which was $11,200. The special grade beef was $250 per kilogram, which was $55,000. The preferred grade beef was $100 per kilogram, which was $35,100. The standard grade beef was $19.57, $5. The commercial grade beef was $10 per kilogram, which was $410. The rest were not included. The total value of this cow was $103,667, $5. As expected of a cow that could enter the top 8 in the United States. The last one was worth $100,000. If such a cow was placed on other ranches, it would definitely be a breeding cow or a king cow. However, in a top ranch it was far inferior. However, the fact that a cow could be sold for $100,000 still caused the audience to exclaim. Indeed, these top beef cows were too valuable. Of course, Jiang Hai was not worried about this. Not to mention that this cow was nearly 500 kilograms heavier than his cow. Jiang Hai did not care much about the slaughter rate. His goal was only the gold medal. It's our turn. After the announcement, this cow was pushed down. Next was Jiang Hai's cow, which was in 7th place. After saying that, Robbins Garcia went over to help Burke Dollar, and the staff pushed the cow up. However, as soon as the bull came up, it could be seen that it was much smaller than the Charolais bull from before. This cow is called Soaring Dragon No. 3. It comes from Winthrop's Soaring Dragon Manor. The Soaring Dragon Manor is the dark horse of this year's beef show. Even with the capabilities of their manor, they were able to produce 3 beef cows. It seems like they have secured at least 2 awards. The host couldn't help but sigh when he saw the cow being pushed onto the stage. Originally, this competition was supposed to be a match between Texas and Montana. However, now Jiang Hai felt that Texas and Montana were similar. Now he wanted to see how good the quality of his cow was. This is an Angus cow. When it was alive, it weighed 760 kilograms. Wow, it is considered a big one among Angus cows. Let's see how strong it is. As soon as the host finished speaking, a professional butcher stepped forward and started to cut the cow. However, as soon as the first cut was made, the pink beef was flipped out. The white marble-like fat in the middle of the pink beef was perfectly arranged in front of everyone. Superior grade beef on the first cut? Looking at the perfect beef, many people below the stage exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, More people had greedy looks in their eyes. The butcher on the stage was stunned for a moment, but he still started to cut the cow quickly. With each cut, the audience below would exclaim in surprise. It was really frightening. Jiang Hai and the others had seen this kind of occasion before, but they were still very happy to see their surprised expressions. This feeling of vanity really made them a little complacent. Because the beef was relatively small, it only took about 20 minutes to cut it out. The appraiser also walked up to the stage and looked at the beef with a surprised face. Then he weighed the beef. Cough. To be honest, I have never seen such a cow in all my years of hosting animal husbandry exhibitions. It's really terrifying. Now let me publicize the results of these beef. This Angus cow Soaring Dragon number 3 weighs 760 kilograms and produces 512 kilograms of meat. It has a slaughter rate of 67%, which has already surpassed the Angus cow. Among them, the superior grade beef, hiss. At this point, the host couldn't help but take a deep breath. It was really too terrifying. 118 kilograms, accounting for 23% of the meat yield. Oh my God! Superior grade beef, 312 kilograms, accounting for 61% of all the beef. These two grades of beef alone account for 84% of all the meat yield. That's terrifying. Superior grade beef, 51 kilograms, accounting for 10%. Standard grade beef, 11 kilograms, accounting for 2%. Commercial grade beef, 5 kilograms, accounting for 1%. The remaining 3% are usable and minced. This beef is really terrifying. Listening to the host's report, the people below the stage were also calculating. 118 kilograms of superior grade beef was $82,600, and 312 kilograms of superior grade beef was $78,000. These two grades alone were worth $160,000. The rest was just a small amount of money. Jiang Hai secretly nodded at these figures. Of course, not all of the beef in his manor were like this. These three were specially strengthened by Jiang Hai before he came here. But even so, according to this price, the rest of the beef in his manor could be sold for more than 140,000 gold coins without a problem. And this time, after making a name for himself, according to Pra Walton, she could buy Jiang Hai's beef for $860 per kilogram. In this way, Jiang Hai's income would increase again. This was the effect of branding. At this time, the audience below the stage, after calculating the income of this cow, looked at the cow and Jiang Hai with some red eyes. Before this, they also knew that this beef was worth a lot, but they didn't think that this beef would be worth so much. Chapter 701. How is this possible? My God, is this still the Angus beef? Don't tell me he used some kind of drug. I think so too. Otherwise, how could we not know what Angus cattle looks like? How could such a small cow produce so much high-grade beef? I think the Soaring Dragon Manor must have used some unspeakable means. That's right. Alright, stop talking nonsense. If he used some kind of unspeakable method, would he still dare to participate in the competition? Do you think the appraisers hired by the organizers are incompetent? If there is a problem, how can they not see it? Maybe they received some kind of dirty money? Yes, maybe they are in cahoots. If this guy really has a secret recipe that can improve the quality of the beef, why didn't he take it out? That's right, that's right. Looking at the price of the beef on the stage, many manor and ranch owners below the stage whispered. In their opinion, Jiang Hai's cow must have some kind of problem. Pra Walton was also sitting below the stage. As the manager of Sam's Club, she naturally had the qualifications to sit here. Listening to the words of those people, she couldn't help but smile disdainfully. She knew better than anyone whether Jiang Hai's cow had any problem or not. No matter which country it was the same. It was very common to say that grapes were sour when one couldn't eat them. It was said that cutting off one's source of income was like killing one's parents. Now, although Jiang Hai didn't cut off their source of income, Jiang Hai had a way to improve the quality of the beef, but he didn't tell them. This was a crime. In fact, this was the United States. Fortunately, it was the United States. It wasn't that Jiang Hai cheated them, but because the system was different, Sometimes the way of dealing with affairs was different. The United States was a world of rich people. It was a world of government. Although the ones who had the final say were the plutocrats, these people wouldn't easily shake their foundation. They needed to set some examples of the American dream. They would let some people take advantage of the loopholes and make a lot of money. Therefore, even if they knew that Jiang Hai had a secret recipe to improve the quality of the beef, as long as Jiang Hai didn't get in their way, as long as Jiang Hai didn't do anything out of line, no one could force him to hand it over. This was the reality. There were many people like this in the United States. Some very important patents were held in the hands of the plutocrats. If the plutocrats didn't hand over the patents, the United States government wouldn't harm their personal interests. Of course, it was another matter whether they would study it privately or not. But at least on the surface, they still maintained the principle of personal wealth above everything else. But it was different in China. In China, people paid attention to balance. If Jiang Hai's beef cattle technology really had a high value for the cultivation of beef, then there was no need to consider it in China. Someone would definitely ask Jiang Hai to hand over the technology. If the technology was handed over to the country could say that it was taken from the people and used by the people. But if the technology was handed over to someone, then that person would become the ambitious Jiang Hai. Of course, the premise was that the person's influence must be great. Don't say that this was the black country. Jiang Hai was not worth a cent. This was the reality. For example, the famous academician Yuan had developed hybrid rice and donated it to the country. It didn't matter if he was willing to do it or not. If he was an American, after developing the hybrid rice, his net worth would be at least $10 billion. Even if he only sold the patent, it would still be the same. But in China, the country would only give some rewards. A few million, tens of millions, compared to a few billion USD. This was not a small amount. Of course, there was another political issue involved in this. That was the question of patriotism, and how much one was willing to contribute to the country. Jiang Hai was still a citizen of Huaxia. This position would not change. Otherwise, Jiang Hai would be banned. For this kind of matter, it was better to stop here. It was enough to say it softly. In short, Jiang Hai was now in the United States. So, even if these people were envious, they could only watch. To be honest, I feel that the ranking of the Soaring Dragon Manor's cow is really low. I don't know what to say. Okay, let's calm down. Let's welcome the next cow. The one ranked 6th is a Hayford cow from Frankville, Texas. Its name is Sir Gaul. No matter what the people below said, the host on the stage was still very calm. After looking at the card in his hand, he directly entered the process of the next cow. The Hayford cow. Although this cow was also called Frankville or Gaul. In fact, this cow was not a French breed but a British breed. It first appeared in Herefordshire in the south of England. It was the oldest small and medium-sized breed in the world. But no matter how small the breed was, it was still much bigger than Jiang Hai's Angus cow. When it reached adulthood, its weight was between 1 ton and 1,100 kilograms. This cow was actually very good. At least it was better than the 8th cow. However, Jiang Hai's cow was in front of it, so this cow was not worth much. Although it could be sold for about $110,000. Compared to Jiang Hai's cow, the difference was huge. After the 6th cow was cut, it was time to move on to the 5th cow. Jiang Hai's Soaring Dragon number 1 was in the 5th place. When Jiang Hai's cow was brought up, the sound of people sucking in cold air became even more obvious. Originally, they thought that Jiang Hai only had one good cow, but they didn't expect that Jiang Hai had so many good cows. When the butcher began to cut the cow, the discussion below became louder. Like Soaring Dragon number 3, this cow had been carefully selected by Robbins Garcia. It had shocked everyone in the previous round. This cow was estimated to be worth more than $160,000. The lightest Angus cow could be sold for $160,000. These people did not even dare to think about it. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was standing by the side of the screen, many people's eyes turned red. However, many people were deep in thought. For example, Luke Shan, who had also come over. Although his main assets were shares, he was a rancher. Luke Shawn himself was a rancher. This ranch could be traced back to the Spanish period. At that time, his family raised cattle here. But later, the Mexicans came and drove them away, and they lost their ranch. But later, when the United States counterattacked, his family played a big role. In order to thank them and reward them, his family's ranch was set up at that time. With a certain amount of money, when Luke Shawn was middle-aged, he had set his sights on internet companies. Microsoft, Apple, Google. Even Mark Cuban, a famous internet magnate in Texas, was one of his partners. However, his shares were in other people's hands, so he could be said to be a hidden tycoon. But he knew that his roots were in this ranch. That was why he met Jiang Hai. Now, looking at Jiang Hai's cows, to be honest, he was no longer satisfied with only 5% of the premium beef. He wanted more beef, but looking at Jiang Hai, he knew that Jiang Hai would not tell him this secret. The Japanese and their agents in the United States were also staring at Jiang Hai. When Jiang Hai's cow was shown, everyone knew that they had no chance of winning the gold award. Now the only thing they could think of was how to get the technology from Jiang Hai. However, facing their gazes, Jiang Hai just chuckled. "Do you want to cause trouble for me with these rotten eggs?" Naive. After Jiang Hai's second beef was finished, everyone no longer discussed the issue of the Beef Cattle Exhibitions Award. Even if this was Texas, even if this was their home court, the home court could not be too biased. Even if this was an NBA game, the referees could not make a shot miss without a foul. By the way, their players were not prepared to defend, so the shot was invalid. Although some people from other countries were indeed shameless, they were not shameless to such an extent. After the fifth cow was cut, the fourth cow was still a Texas cow, a Limousin cow. Although it was not bad, it still lost. Third place was still Jiang Hai's cow. There was nothing much to say. The Soaring Dragon 2 continued to crush the audience. Second place was a Montana cow. It was a high-quality cow, but compared to Jiang Hai's cow, it was useless. This was a natural disparity between the two. But after the horse cow, the last cow was a Texas Matsusaka cow, which was the cow that Jiang Hai had seen before. This cow, whether it was in terms of size, or the brightness of its hair, it could be said to be the best of the best. Looking at it, Robbins Garcia and the others were almost drooling. After the cut, the data of this cow was quite eye-catching. It weighed 1 ton, and its meat yield was 67%. It was 670 kilograms, and its meat yield was 6%. It was 40 kilograms. Besides Jiang Hai's cow, this was the highest percentage of meat yield. Even the Montana Danma cattle only had a 4.5% meat yield, which was less than 5%. 5% meat was a watershed in the beef industry. After 5%, it was considered super beef, but it was just ordinary beef, nothing more. Jiang Hai was confident that he did not need to raise them. As long as they ate his grass, they would be able to raise these kings. "We chose the wrong cow. If we had chosen a bigger cow, we would have earned more." Looking at the Matsusaka bull, Robbins Garcia couldn't help but feel a little regretful. He had been too careful back then. It's not a pity. I think the Angus cows are pretty good. Alright, it's time to wrap things up. Give some of the beef from these 3 cows to the organizers and judges. Pra Walton will take the rest. It's time for you to move. Hearing Robbins Garcia's words, Jiang Hai smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Then he walked out of the side curtain. The 8 cows had been cut. Next, it was time to give out the scores and announce the winners. In everyone's opinion, this promotion was a little redundant. Sure enough, when the bronze and soy sauce awards were announced, none of Jiang Hai's cows were selected. When it was time to announce the silver award, the winners were Soaring Dragon number 2 and number 3. As for the gold award, it was number 1's. After receiving the 3 silver-plated and gold-plated trophies from the host, Jiang Hai smiled and said a few polite words before leaving the backstage. When he left the exhibition hall, Pra Walton had already sent a car to wait for Jiang Hai. As for Robbins Garcia and the others, they had already left. After Jiang Hai got in the car, it started and left. Less than a minute after Jiang Hai left, a lot of people rushed over, looking for Jiang Hai. Obviously, these people had ulterior motives. This time, the reputation of Winthrop's Soaring Dragon Manor has risen. Sitting in the car, Prawalton said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. Yes, things here are finally done. Next is the matter of the Boston Fishery Exhibition. That's your territory, so I don't have to worry about it. Now that your reputation has spread, I still need to discuss with the head office about the price increase of your beef. Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton smiled and said, she really liked business and negotiation. She felt that this was the most exciting thing besides doing it with Jiang Hai. Then I'll have to trouble you, although I'm quite reluctant to let you go. Pulling Prawalton beside him, and letting her sit on his lap, Jiang Hai looked at the delicate little face in front of him, and couldn't help but sigh. For him, he was very happy to get along with Prawalton these days. In Jiang Hai's heart, Prawalton's position was actually second only to Chi, because other people really couldn't help him much in business. Chi was one, and Prawalton was the second. However, Chi confirmed it earlier. On the contrary, he didn't know what was going on between Prawalton and himself. They were friends, this could be confirmed. They were partners, this could also be confirmed. But whether they were in a relationship or not, Jiang Hai wasn't sure, and Prawalton wasn't willing to confirm it. They were more than friends, but not yet lovers. But they had slept together many times. Perhaps this idea was slowly changing. Jiang Hai also hoped so. Then you have to thank me properly tonight. You'll be leaving tomorrow. Looking at Jiang Hai's face, which was close at hand, Prawalton was also a little absent-minded. But she reacted in an instant and gently tapped Jiang Hai's nose. Prawalton said with a smile. Chapter 702. Looking at Prawalton's pretty face, Jiang Hai didn't care about anything else, and kissed her directly. In fact, it didn't matter if he kissed her, because Cheryl Lee was driving. In the car, the two were about to start a war. Fortunately, the car was small. It was only a Mercedes-Benz S600. The car in the back was small, so Jiang Hai couldn't use it. Therefore, he just wanted to satisfy his desire. However, when they arrived at the hotel, the thunder triggered the fire. It was estimated that no one would sleep tonight. Jiang Hai and the others didn't sleep, because they wanted to make the best use of their time together. As for the others, they couldn't sleep because of other things. Texas National Livestock Exhibition closed with victory. Soaring Dragon Manor emerged as a new force, and swept the top three. Angus beef is worth $160,000. Who can stop the rise of American beef cattle? Winthrop, Soaring Dragon Manor, mysterious Easterners. Is this the witchcraft of the Easterners or a conspiracy? Unbelievable 20% premium beef yield. Is this a miracle or a sign of the end of the world? The moment the Texas National Livestock Exhibition ended, countless details about the exhibition appeared on the internet and in some newspapers. Among them, Jiang Hai, who had won the gold medal and 2 silver medals, naturally had the highest exposure rate. Jiang Hai, the Soaring Dragon Manor, and the 20% special quality beef production rate. These words would appear in almost every report. Moreover, they would write a special book about it. All of a sudden, all the ranch owners who had read the news were surprised. Most of them began to search for information about the livestock exhibition on the internet. Of course, some of them had friends at the beef cattle exhibition, so they directly called to inquire about the situation. After learning that the report was true, almost all the ranchers and manor owners in the United States were alarmed. Many people went to Boston. Some of these people were reporters who wanted to interview Jiang Hai. Some of them were from the government. They wanted to see if there was any way for Jiang Hai to make this technology public. There were also some people with ulterior motives. They wanted to replace Jiang Hai. However, once they went, they would return empty-handed. Jiang Hai was used to keeping a low profile. It was impossible for him to accept an interview. The government was even easier to deal with. If they wanted to study the cows, they could take them away for research. They could even give them the research data on Jiang Hai's research. But no matter what, they couldn't figure out why the cows grew like this. They could also study the grass, but they couldn't figure out the cause. As for this piece of land, this was Jiang Hai's private land, so they couldn't take it by force. In this country where human rights were emphasized, it was a serious matter for the country to forcefully seize land. If Jiang Hai did not sell it, this piece of land would always be his. As for those business tycoons, Jiang Hai did not care about them. The American tycoons were more interested in the banking industry. Among the top 10 conglomerates in the United States, the first was the Rockefeller conglomerate. Their main operation was in the oil industry. The so-called Mobil Oil was owned by their family. The second was the Morgan conglomerate, which mainly operated in the banking industry. This name might not be very famous in China, but it represented absolute power in the United States. It controlled General Electric, General Dynamics, Grumman Aircraft Company, and was also the largest arms contractor in the United States. As its trust fund began to grow rapidly, its strength was comparable to the Rockefeller conglomerate. Of the remaining 8 corporations, the third was Citibank. Needless to say, it was a bank. The fourth was the DuPont Consortium. Its main business was chemical industry and arms industry. The fifth was the B-City Consortium. The sixth was the Mellon Consortium. They monopolized the lead industry in the United States and the oil in the Gulf. However, the Cleveland Consortium, which was ranked 7th, was mainly engaged in industrial activities, such as the local coal and steel industry. The 8th largest financial group, the Chicago Financial Group, had 5 banks and 2 insurance companies as its core. The 9th largest financial group, the California Financial Group, also had banks as its core. The 10th largest financial group, the Texas Financial Group, started from the oil and arms industry. These were the only 10 that posed a threat to Jiang Hai. In addition to these 10, the name of Walmart was enough to block the rest. Walmart was known for being low-key, so it was naturally the best choice. The 10 that posed a threat to Jiang Hai didn't operate ranching, so the price of Jiang Hai's beef and fish had nothing to do with them. If one day they really shed all pretense of cordiality and wanted to look for trouble with Jiang Hai, then as long as Jiang Hai took out the oil futures, the matter would be settled. Some people would say that the oil futures were nothing more than some oil production, so they could earn some profit. Indeed, in the hands of ordinary people, it was just some futures. But in the hands of Jiang Hai, it was different. For those consortia, it was different. In fact, the oil futures in the hands of Jiang Hai were equivalent to a lot of crude oil. This oil was his. If he wanted to take this oil with him and join any oil consortium, no one would be unwilling to do so. Compared to the black blood oil, Jiang Hai's manner was nothing. There were also people with ulterior motives. Jiang Hai didn't care about them. Jiang Hai himself wasn't a good person. Those who came to seek cooperation, Jiang Hai depended on his mood. If they wanted to play dirty, then don't blame Jiang Hai for letting Azalina go. Now that Azalina had appeared, no one knew if these people would be able to leave this place alive. After spending a good night with Prawalton and Cheryl, Jiang Hai and the others took a plane back to Boston early the next morning. They had to start preparing for the next fishing exhibition. As for Prawalton, she took her company's plane and went directly back to New York. She wouldn't go to the fishing exhibition, but it was necessary to pay attention to it. Her Sam's Club was going to focus on Jiang Hai's seafood. After arriving in Boston, Edward Anderson and Tommy Charles specially drove over to pick up the 4 of them. At this time, although the 5 of them were physically tired, they were quite excited. Robbins Garcia, Burke Dollar, and Belle Lester each held a trophy and couldn't close their mouths. Connerson Peters was much quieter. After getting in the car, Robbins Garcia was still talking to Edward Anderson and Tommy Charles about the grand occasion. Of course, he also talked about Jiang Hai's revenge. After hearing about such a disgusting revenge method, they couldn't help but show a strange smile. This revenge was a little too disgusting. Jiang Hai listened to them and just smiled. In fact, he didn't think that revenge would be so disgusting. Sitting in the car, they quickly returned to Jiang Hai's manor in Winthrop. As soon as Jiang Hai got out of the car, he saw that the girls were already standing in front of the villa, waiting for Jiang Hai. Even Aphrodite and the others came with them. "Hey boss, take care of your body. The fishing exhibition is the day after tomorrow. Don't be too weak." Looking at these girls, Edward Anderson elbowed Jiang Hai with a sullen face, and then smiled slyly. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but give him the middle finger. Edward Anderson and the others looked at Jiang Hai's actions and didn't care. Instead, they laughed, and then said goodbye to Qi Jie and left. Obviously these days, Qi Jie's position in this manner was quite stable. You're finally back. After Edward Anderson and the others left, Delina and Marian immediately rushed over, hugging Jiang Hai's arms, one on the left and one on the right, and said excitedly, "What? Did you miss me?" Jiang Hai said with a smile as he touched the heads of his two daughters. "Well, a little." Feeling Jiang Hai's hands, the two girls couldn't help blushing, and then muttered in a low voice. Looking at them, Jiang Hai smiled and rubbed their heads. After that he walked into the villa. Looking at the girls gathered in the villa, Jiang Hai honestly felt that this place gave him a strong feeling of home. Even his home in Ice City didn't give him such a feeling. He walked up and hugged Feng Yunshan, Ai Xiaoxi, Qi Jie Qia, Azalina, Aphrodite Dana, Hilda Page Shira Ashiria Bridget and Janice. Finally, he hugged Delina and Marian and sat on the sofa. Now except for Qi Li and Prawalton, there was only Selena Gomez, who was also uncertain. Without Selena Gomez, this house was becoming more and more like a family. Feeling Jiang Hai's presence, many girls closed their eyes. In fact, for them, it didn't matter where their home was. As long as they followed Jiang Hai, this was the feeling of home. The family stayed in this way until the evening. Then, Qia went to prepare a sumptuous dinner. Of course, Aphrodite and the others would also help. In their view, they were actually Jiang Hai's maidservants. Qi Jie, Qia, Feng Yunshan, and Ai Xiaoxi were at least concubines. When the concubines went to cook, they at least had to help. Jiang Hai had some sumptuous dinner on the table. After dinner, it was time for the main event. Jiang Hai was pulled into the room by Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi, but not long after he entered, he found that Qi Jie and Qia also came in with Aphrodite and the others. What's going on? Looking at so many people in front of him, except for Delina, Marian, and Azalina, everyone in the villa had gathered in Jiang Hai's room. Originally, Jiang Hai was still thinking about who he should be with tonight, but it was a little unexpected that so many people came together. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jie couldn't help but glare at him. Then, she took off her shirt and threw it at Jiang Hai's face. Then she directly threw herself on Jiang Hai. "You're lucky tonight." Qi Jie glanced at Jiang Hai, lowered her head, and the invasion began. Looking at Qi Jie's appearance, the other women also looked at each other and took off their jackets. In an instant, 12 naked women in the room surrounded Jiang Hai and undressed him. When they found that Jiang Hai was ready, Ai Xiaoxi was the first to get on the train to the top. Last night, Jiang Hai almost didn't sleep. Prawalton and Cheryl Lee were still very wild. But tonight he couldn't sleep at all. The noises started from 8 p.m. After all, they had just finished dinner. The noises continued until the next morning. Oh no, it should be considered morning. Jiang Hai's room was filled with a strong smell, which was proof that they had gone crazy. He slept from 4 in the morning until around 4 in the afternoon, when Jiang Hai woke up from hunger. Yes, he woke up from hunger, not from sleep. Patting his aching head, Jiang Hai looked at the people around him. But at this time, Aphrodite and the others had already left. Although they also had a good time last night, they were not too tired. They got up and went to work at 9 o'clock in the morning. In their view, taking care of Jiang Hai, solving Jiang Hai's needs, and working was their duty. At this time, the only people who were still sleeping beside Jiang Hai were Qi Jie, Qia, Feng Yunshan, and Ai Xiaoxi. Jiang Hai hugged the 4 girls into his arms and took a deep breath. Because of Jiang Hai's movement, the 4 girls also woke up from their sleep. Seeing that Jiang Hai had woken up, their faces were a little red. "You're up, I thought you would sleep until tomorrow." Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Jie said lightly. Although she was very shy at this time, she was still strong. At the same time, she took the initiative to lie on Jiang Hai's chest and said proudly, "Phew, if it's like this every night, I estimate that it won't be long before you have to collect my corpse." Patting Qi Jie's butt, Jiang Hai said with a smile, Although it was very enjoyable last night, the burden on his body was still great. Even if he has the Dragon Ball, he still needs to exercise some restraint in this regard. The most important thing is that he doesn't know if it's because of the Dragon Ball. But after Jiang Hai saw a woman throwing herself into his arms, his self-control became extremely poor and his mind went blank. This is not a good habit. It's said that dragons are born with a natural instinct. Jiang Hai discovered this point from the beginning. This is really troublesome. He doesn't want to die on a woman's body in the end. That would be really too depressing. You wish. It's just because you've been gone for more than 10 days. We miss you a little. These days Sister Feng and I have also discussed it. From now on, Little Ye and I will sleep with you every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Xiaoxi and Sister Feng will come over to accompany you on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Every night, Aphrodite and the others will take turns to come over and sleep with us. You're really lucky. Patting Jiang Hai's chest, Qi Jie said bitterly. Chapter 703. Other than the craziness on the first night, everything returned to the rotation system that Qi Jie and the others mentioned on the second day of Jiang Hai's return. It just so happened that it was Friday, and the Boston fishing exhibition would begin on Saturday. Jiang Hai hugged Qi Jie, and had Aphrodite and Dana by his side. Naturally, there was nothing much to say that night. Although they still exercised, considering that Jiang Hai was a little exhausted yesterday, they didn't exercise too intensely. They only did it once, and didn't let Jiang Hai move. After riding for a while, the four women fell asleep in each other's arms. Looking at the four people sleeping beside him, Jiang Hai's heart throbbed a little. Unknowingly, they had also officially entered his life. What will happen in the future? Who would know? The next morning, Jiang Hai woke up very early, about 3 o'clock in the morning. This was because he had something important to do today. After washing up, Jiang Hai also walked downstairs with his clothes on. When he walked downstairs, Edward Anderson and the others were already prepared. The back of each of the two F-750s was modified into a tank. In the tank were the seafood that they prepared last night. The back of the F-650 was modified into a freezer to store the frozen seafood. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Robbins Garcia and the others smiled at Jiang Hai, but the smiles on their faces were somewhat forced. Although they knew that their seafood was quite good, who knew how it would be before they sold it? How's the preparation? Looking at Robbins Garcia, Jiang Hai jumped up and glanced at the fish in the tank, then turned around and asked him. It's almost done. Phew, success or failure depends on this. Robbins Garcia took a deep breath and said seriously after hearing Jiang Hai's words. Patting his shoulder, Jiang Hai smiled. He wasn't giving him pressure. Jiang Hai is quite confident in his fish, and he believes that Robbins Garcia and the others will also be confident. After everything was ready, the three cars carrying Jiang Hai, Robbins Garcia, Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, Andrew Christian, Marin Rupert, and Jiang Hai's bodyguard Knerson Peters went to Boston together. More than an hour later, before 5 o'clock in the morning, Jiang Hai's team had arrived at the location of the fishing exhibition. In fact, Jiang Hai has been to this place before. He first saw Schwenny Clive here, near the pier in Boston. But at this time, this place has become one of the 3 fishing exhibitions in the world. Jiang Hai's principle of wealth. This time, he rented booth is very near the front. And the place was not small. When they arrived, a lot of people had already arrived. These people were all fishermen or fishing companies nearby. They were also going to participate in this exhibition. After all, it's right in front of their door. And the booths here are open air after all. So it's not very expensive. So many fishermen will come to try their luck and see if they can get some sales and special orders. The price of seafood this year is not very good, and they are anxious. In addition to them, many other fishing companies also sent people over. However, seafood is not beef cattle. Beef cattle can be transported, but seafood tends to stink when it's transported. Even if it's said that stinky fish and shrimps are fine, it will definitely arouse the disgust of the buyers. Therefore, there are not many big fishing companies here. Most of them are near Boston, and some companies far away sent some representatives over at most, with a signboard and some ordinary frozen fish. In fact, they are more interested in such a trading platform, that's all. When Jiang Hai came, the focus here was a fishing company called Tony and Clark. But after Jiang Hai came, their limelight disappeared. These fishermen are much more peaceful than those in Texas, and the people in this company have also heard of Jiang Hai. After all, Jiang Hai's reputation is famous in this area. It's not an exaggeration to say that this is his home ground. After exchanging greetings with them, Jiang Hai began to get busy. First, they filled the troughs given by the organizer with seawater, then put the live seafood into the troughs. This time, Robbins Garcia is very attentive to this fishing exhibition. So in the fishing ground, except for Jiang Hai's treasured Yangtze River swordfish, Chinese bahaba, and yellow croaker, he caught a lot of other fish and put them into the troughs here. The live American red snapper, salmon, mackerel, grouper, and even 2 anchovies, as well as some other fish, were put into different troughs according to the price. The other troughs were filled with other things, such as Jiang Hai's lobster. Although it's a Boston lobster, it attracted a lot of attention as soon as it appeared. In addition to these lobsters, there are also many abalones, king crabs, geoduck clams, and so on. There's no way to bring sea cucumbers. Firstly, there's no way to leave the water, and secondly, Americans don't eat sea cucumbers. After these things are done, it's time for the main event. First, they made some small troughs, and after filling them with ice, Jiang Hai and the others took out their already chilled fish from the trunk of the F-650. When the first fish came out, a lot of people sucked in a breath of cold air, especially the people from the fishing company, who were in the limelight at the beginning. They originally wanted to compete with Jiang Hai, but at this time, that thought disappeared in an instant. Because at this time in front of them, the fish that Jiang Hai took out was not an ordinary fish, but a tuna. At the same time, it's not an ordinary tuna, but the legendary bluefin tuna. This fish is almost 4 meters long. Although it's already dead, it attracted a lot of attention as soon as it was taken out of the freezer. This fish was carefully prepared by Robbins Garcia. For this fish, he went out to sea for many days before catching it. After catching it, he directly drained its blood and then put it in the freezer. It's just the 3rd day now, and it's still in its freshest state. As soon as the fish appeared, the entire exhibition hall fell silent, just like when his beef was cut by a knife at the beef show. Looking at this huge tuna, many people sighed helplessly. With this fish, Jiang Hai will inevitably cause a big sensation in this exhibition. The 4 people took this nearly 500-kilogram fish out of the car, then put it in the prepared ice trough, and covered it with a lot of ice. At the same time, they took a plastic cover to cover the fish. First, it's to prevent flies and other insects, and second, it's to maintain the cold. A fish like this is extremely important. After this fish was sent down, Jiang Hai and the others took out another fish from the F-650's trunk. As soon as they saw this fish, everyone had no intention to compete, because this is another bluefin golden spear. And this fish is bigger than the first one. Although it's only less than 30 centimeters bigger, it's really eye-catching when put together. Although Jiang Hai didn't deliberately raise tuna in his manner, there are a lot of bluefin golden spears. Jiang Hai roughly calculated that there are almost 300 bluefin golden spears in Jiang Hai's manor. He has seen bigger fish than these too, so he won't feel distressed. After these 2 fish were done, Jiang Hai and the others took out a few yellowfin golden spears. After taking out all the fish, Jiang Hai and the others couldn't help sweating. Fortunately, they were already mentally prepared. Although they were very busy, they were still very happy. After sitting there and taking a break, they drove the 3 cars to the parking lot. Soon after, the Boston Fishery Exhibition opened. The Boston Fishery Exhibition is not like the American Animal Husbandry Exhibition, where they have to evaluate beef cattle and cowboys. Here, there were only 2 categories to be evaluated. One was the seller, and the other was the quality seller. The seller referred to the seller who had signed the contract during the exhibition. The first, second, or third place would be enough. As for the quality seller, It was the seller who displayed the best quality seafood. As soon as they saw Jiang Hai's side, the title of the best quality seller, these people naturally gave way. The seafood on Jiang Hai's side is really terrifying. The people from the fishing company also came over to take a look. After glancing at it, they completely gave up. In fact, according to their company's preparation this year, it's not a problem to get a ranking in the exhibition outside. But now, looking at the things prepared by Jiang Hai, they laughed. Is this a joke? How can such things be compared? The Boston lobster, from the tail to the tip of the pincers, is almost 90 centimeters long, and its weight must be more than 15 kilograms. Such a lobster usually can be rated as the king of lobsters, but here, this lobster is just a lobster, because Jiang Hai caught more than 20 lobsters of this level. More than 20 lobsters pushed in the tank. Looks really spectacular. The abalones, each of them is the size of an adult man's palm. Of course, it's not the palm of a basketball player. It's just a normal palm. Each abalone is this big. The crabs are also surprisingly big. Jiang Hai didn't bring any shellfish because he doesn't like them. These alone are enough to crush the people here. What's more, he has a killer move here. Although most of his fish are not small, they are not particularly big, but those tunas are enough. After looking at Jiang Hai's things, the person from the fishing company left with a bright smile. Of course, whether he cursed Jiang Hai in his heart, Jiang Hai doesn't know. But looking at his weak footsteps, his mood isn't very good. At 7 o'clock in the morning, after everything in the market was done, the Boston Fishing Exhibition officially began. As the security guards outside let the tourists in, countless people walked into this huge square. These people are divided into three kinds: people from various fishing companies, who came to collect fish, and some restaurant owners and waiters, who also came to collect fish. Of course, some people from high-end seafood restaurants are also among them, and some people are just tourists, who came to buy some cheap seafood to eat at home. But in any case, there are a lot of people coming in. Jiang Hai's stall is quite eye-catching. It has a good location and a lot of things. Many people pay attention to Jiang Hai's stall as soon as it came up. When they saw the huge lobsters, crabs, high-quality fish, and a few tunas, the onlookers became more and more. Looking at this situation, Jiang Hai winked at Edward Anderson, the boss of Jiang Hai's fishermen, also came forward and began to talk. Come and take a look, the freshest seafood. These are all caught by us from the sea in the early morning. You can sell them separately or take orders. Patting the sink, Edward Anderson also said loudly. Hearing his words, many people looked over. Your seafood looks really good, what's the price? After hesitating for a moment, a well-dressed white man standing in front said to Edward Anderson. Hearing his words, Edward Anderson couldn't help but chuckle. He fished out an American red fish from the sink next to him, then beat it to death in front of these people. He then cut open the belly, took out the stomach inside, and opened it for everyone. As soon as they saw Edward Anderson's action, many people subconsciously took a step back. But these are just tourists who are afraid of splashing blood. Those who didn't retreat are knowledgeable. They know what Edward Anderson means. He wants them to see the quality of the fish. After cutting open the belly of the fish, they found that Jiang Hai's fish is a little different from other fish. When the belly of other fish is opened, it will be particularly fishy, and even have a stench. Of course, this is only the case for farmed fish. But when the belly of Jiang Hai's fish was opened, the fishy smell became a little lighter, and a trace of fragrance even flowed out from the belly of the fish. The blood of the fish is particularly clear, and when Edward Anderson opened the belly of the fish, there are only grass seeds, and some remains of small shrimps inside. I'm not bragging, but our fish have not been fed a single bit of food. You can search the whole United States, no, the whole world, and the quality of our fish is the best. Come and try the sashimi, this is an American red fish, and see how it tastes. Looking at the people in front of him, Edward Anderson couldn't help but chuckle, then said loudly. Chapter 704. Raw fish was first eaten in Huaxia, but now it was most popular in Japan. In fact, during the gap in the middle, the main raw fish was still eaten in Europe. Don't forget that salmon was introduced to Japan by the Norwegians. The method of eating raw fish was also introduced. The real salmon was called Atlantic salmon, which was not found in the Pacific Ocean. Sashimi was also known as fish slices, sashimi, and sashimi. It was a dish that was made by cutting fresh fish and shellfish into slices and adding seasonings to it. Generally, the more common sashimi in China were tuna, salmon, bream, flatfish, bonito, springfish, mackerel, perch, mackerel, and so on. Of course, some people would use freshwater fish, but freshwater fish had many bones and were not very suitable for sashimi. In addition, in Japan, there were also quite a lot of other creatures that were eaten raw. Octopus, squid, cuttlefish, whales, and so on were also common ingredients. Although American red fish was not the best raw food, now that Edward Anderson had opened one, many people still wanted to try it, especially Jiang Hai's American red fish, which looked so good. After scraping off the scales and cutting open the silver gray fish skin, the unusually white and tender fish meat appeared in front of everyone in an instant. Looking at the crystal clear fish meat in front of them, many people subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and there was some eagerness in their eyes. Edward Anderson saw the expressions of these people. Looking at their expressions, he couldn't help but smile softly and began to slice the fish. The American red fish fillet was relatively easy to cut, and there was no need to freeze it first. The meat inside was more compact. In fact, if it wasn't compact, the fish raised by Jiang Hai would also be very compact, and there were very few bones in it. With the flash of Edward Anderson's knife, the side of a fish was cut. After cutting it, he pushed the fish forward, indicating that everyone could try it. Looking at the fish fillet that had been cut, everyone hesitated for a moment. In the end, they couldn't resist the idea of trying it. A white man picked up a piece and put it into his mouth. After chewing it gently, his eyes lit up instantly. Wow, the taste is really amazing. If it wasn't for the American red fish, I would have thought it was salmon. Chewing the fish in his mouth, the man said unexpectedly, and then immediately reached out to take a piece. Since there was someone who ate the grapes first, naturally, there would be others who would try it. In an instant, many hands grabbed the American red fish that had been sliced. Although there was no ritual, no cold storage, and no ice cubes, these people were quite satisfied with the food. The quality of Jiang Hai's fish is obviously not on the same level. His American red fish, in fact, is not inferior to the average wild Atlantic salmon. His salmon is not worse than tuna. Even if it is not comparable to the legendary bluefin, it is not a problem to compare to the yellowfin. And his yellowfin is actually not worse than the top bluefin. The taste of his bluefin is even better than the best bluefin. The taste of his bluefin is even better than the best bluefin. This was also the reason why Jiang Hai felt that he would lose a lot of money if he sold the fish at the normal price. If he wanted to sell, he naturally wanted to sell the best and at the highest price. But fish was different from beef. Beef was divided according to the part, but fish was divided according to the type. If he sold the fish at the normal price, Jiang Hai would lose a lot. Looking at the people in front of him who were crazily snatching the fish, Jiang Hai sat in the distance and couldn't help but chuckle. Although he had expected such a scene, when it really happened in front of him, Jiang Hai was still very excited. It seems that our reputation has been established this time, boss. Tommy Charles looked at Jiang Hai and said with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also chuckled. Isn't this their purpose? The American red fish has been tasted, but I know at a glance that you are not full. Come, I'll kill another salmon for everyone to try. The side of the American red fish was divided in almost less than a minute. Edward Anderson called Eleanor Cece to cut the other side, but this time it was even faster. Maybe in less than a minute, only the skeleton of the fish was left. Looking at the people in front of him, who were licking their lips with shining eyes, Edward Anderson laughed. Then, under everyone's gaze, he directly fished out a salmon from the sink. This salmon was bought by Jiang Hai when it was 4 years old, so this fish was not small. When it was raised, it was about 10 centimeters long and weighed half a caddy. After entering the water, this fish was not like the seedlings of the American red fish, which still mainly ate aquatic plants. After entering the water, it directly preyed on small squid and small octopus. These things contain more nutrients and energy, so although it was only raised for a year, this fish was not smaller than the average adult fish. After leaving the water, it was particularly lively and kept struggling. The Atlantic salmon was a kind of fish that did not grow big. Why was that said? This was related to their living habits. The Atlantic salmon was actually the same kind of fish as the Asian salmon. This was also why people often sold the Asian salmon as salmon in China. In fact, there was really no difference between the two in terms of appearance. There was also no difference when it was cut open. Except for the different taste, the biggest difference between the two was that one had black spots all over its body, and the other had black spots only near its fins. That was all. In addition to looking similar, the living habits of these two fish were also the same. They would live in the river for a few years, and when they were about to grow, they would return to the sea. These two fish belonged to the upper echelon, and only lived in the sea from sea level to 20 meters below the sea. They grew up in the sea, and when they reached maturity, they would return to the river where they were born, change their bodies and prepare to mate. After mating, these fish would die, so it wasn't that these fish couldn't grow, but the problem was that they died the first time they matured, and didn't continue to live. These guys could be considered to be existences that were willing to risk their lives for love. It was precisely because of this that there was no record of the size of salmon caught in this world, because they did not grow big. However, at this time, Jianghai's salmon had actually grown to the limit of its size, and it was particularly thick. With Edward Anderson's strength, he was a little out of control when catching it. Fortunately, the old fisherman was extremely experienced. He directly pressed the fish on the pressing board, then picked up the stick next to him. After 2 strokes, the fish almost stopped moving. Then he continued to shave, remove the scales and peel the skin. When the perfect orange-red fish mixed with white fat appeared in front of these diners, the eyes of the people who had just finished eating the American red fish lit up subconsciously. Just like beef, salmon meat was also divided into different grades. However, the grades were also different. The main food of wild salmon was Arctic shrimp, so the meat of wild salmon, because of eating shrimp, contained a substance called astaxanthin, which could turn the fish's flesh into an orange-red color. Salmon was only produced in 2 places, the northeast corner of the eastern United States and the southeast corner of Canada, and near Norway in Europe. Other than these 2 places, there were no Atlantic salmon anywhere else, and Norway only provided salmon to island countries. So in other words, the live salmon bought in the domestic seafood market were all fake, and they were all chum. In some high-end supermarkets, there were some packaged Norwegian salmon that might be real, but more than 90% of the salmon in Norway were farmed. There was a huge salmon farm in Norway, and 80% of the salmon sold in the world came from there. But because it was farmed, it was fed with feed. So this kind of salmon, after being farmed, was actually white. Just like the American red fish, the meat was white, not orange-red. In order to dye it, the Norwegians would deliberately feed these salmon with astaxanthin, which was not harmful to the human body. Instead, it was beneficial, but it was not as good as wild salmon. Most of the people here had been dealing with salmon for more than 10 or 20 years. At the sight of this fish, they knew that this fish was not farmed. Instead, it was born with this color. The astaxanthin had already seeped into every cell of the fish. As soon as they saw this, they felt their saliva secreting faster and faster. Looking at them, Edward Anderson was not in a hurry. He smiled and slowly cut half of the salmon sashimi, which took him about 10 minutes to cut. When he was done, he pushed it forward. These people did not even say a word, but directly grabbed a handful and threw it into their mouths. Oh, delicious! As soon as the salmon entered their mouths, their eyes instantly lit up. Jianghai's Atlantic salmon was indeed not an ordinary fish. After the fish entered their mouths, they immediately felt that the fish was soft and chewy. The fish had a sweet and fishy taste that they hadn't tasted for a long time. After tasting it carefully, the taste of the fish was no worse than a top-grade yellowfin golden spear. Thinking of this, these people couldn't help but take a deep breath. Such a high-quality fish, to be honest, was rarely seen in their lives. When the people who had tasted the fish came back to their senses and were ready to eat it again, they found that the salmon was only left with the bones. The fish here is amazing. After tasting 2 fish in a row, these people were not satisfied, but their eyes were shining. This was especially true for the merchants. At this time, the fish in Jiang Hai's tank were no longer fish, they were all money. Thinking of this, their eyes became brighter and brighter. They couldn't wait to rush over, pick up the tank and leave. However, they knew that this was impossible. After killing 2 fishes, Edward Anderson didn't stay idle. Although he wasn't going to kill any more high-grade fishes, those caught fish, such as mackerel, bream, and the like, were also going to be sold. It was easier to show them off. For more than 2 hours, Jiang Hai's booth could be said to be a sea of people. There were already a lot of people around, but now, more people were attracted. They looked at Edward Anderson's actions and subconsciously licked their lips. For them, the fish at Jiang Hai's side could be said to be the most delicious. To be honest, even some individual customers had the idea of buying some fish to eat back. However, when they inquired, they learned that Jiang Hai's fish were only sold wholesale and not individual customers. They were also a little helpless about this. However, they were still reluctant to give up. After eating Jiang Hai's fish sashimi, some people went to the nearby stalls to have a look and eat some. In this exhibition, almost every stall had fish sashimi for free for guests to taste. However, the difference was really too big. After eating Jiang Hai's fish, eating other fish was really not so good. The originally delicious salmon would feel particularly fishy after entering the mouth, and it did not have the sweetness. Those who knew a little would find that the color of the fish was also a little different. At least, it did not look as natural as Jiang Hai's fish. Therefore, after these individual customers walked around, they returned to Jiang Hai's booth. But at this time, they all looked at the merchants. Since Jiang Hai's side does not sell separately, they can wait for these merchants to finish buying, and then buy from these merchants. Although there will be some trouble, they can't go back empty-handed. Moreover, the food here is so delicious. To be honest, I don't know about other people's fish here, but I am very tempted. Give me a price. Sure enough, they did not have to wait too long. The white man who tasted the fish first hesitated and said to Edward Anderson, "After all, the people here are basically Edward Anderson's customers, and Jiang Hai, the boss, has been sitting behind and watching the fun. Sorry, the price of our fish here may be a little beyond your imagination. We are from the Tunglong Company. This time, we are mainly here to promote our brand. Our marine products have basically been bought by Sam's Club and Walmart, and the rest of the marine supermarkets. If you want to buy some, you can squeeze out some stock, but the price, to be honest, may be difficult to accept." Looking at the man in front of him, Edward Anderson's heart was about to bloom, but he still pretended to be a little hesitant and said to him, "Tunglong Manor?" Hearing Edward Anderson's words, the merchants on the opposite side hesitated and looked at Edward Anderson. Edward Anderson turned his body sideways, revealing a smile to Jiang Hai behind him. Chapter 705. When they saw Jiang Hai, who was standing behind Edward Anderson, the businessmen couldn't help but glance at each other. To be honest, they were all in the catering industry. Although the beef industry and the fish industry were in the sea, and the fish industry was on land, they usually didn't interact with each other. However, news still spread very quickly between them. A month ago, Jiang Hai's reputation in Winthrop had only been limited to a few northeastern states in the United States. But now, it was quite popular, especially at the National Animal Husbandry Exhibition that just ended a while ago. Jiang Hai's manor had crushed D-Sachs and Montana's livestock company, which had spread like wildfire. Naturally, these businessmen had also heard about it. Although they didn't know about Jiang Hai and Prawalton, they knew that Jiang Hai's beef was exclusive to Sam's Club and Sea Merchant supermarkets. They hadn't expected that Jiang Hai's fish would be of such high quality. No matter how expensive your fish is, there should be a price. You can't sell your red fish at the same price as the bluefin golden spear, right? After hesitating for a while, The Soaring Dragon Manor had unknowingly become a guarantee of quality. After hesitating for a while, the businessman asked Edward Anderson, who was in front of him, with a hint of uncertainty in his tone. "That's impossible, but it's more expensive than the ones sold on the market. If you don't run a high-end Western restaurant or have a distribution channel, I don't approve of you buying our fish. Although the fish next to us are inferior, they are more in line with the public's needs. All right, I won't keep you in suspense. These barracuda, herring, mackerel, and other marine fish are all from the sea. They are all priced at $10 per kilogram. These red fish are the seedlings we bought with the latest technology. They are priced at $40 per kilogram. The grouper is $60 per kilogram. The anchovy is $65 per kilogram. The Atlantic salmon is $100 per kilogram. And the spotted prawns are $30 per kilogram. We only sell lobsters of this size, which are priced at $5,000 per kilogram, and we guarantee that they are at least 15 kilograms. The king crab is also priced according to its size, which is $2,000 per kilogram. The tuna is another matter," Edward Anderson said straightforwardly when he saw that they were interested. Hearing his price, many of the smaller vendors sucked in a breath of cold air and left. Remember the price they quoted when they went to the fishing company? The red fish was $6 per kilogram. The grouper and anchovy were $20 per kilogram. The salmon was $28 per kilogram. And the spotted prawns were $15 per kilogram. Now Jianghai's price was at least doubled, and the Atlantic salmon was almost quadrupled. This kind of difference was really unacceptable to these people. Therefore, the general second-hand dealers retreated at this time. They had no choice but to retreat as they really couldn't afford it. The buyers of the Gao family restaurant and some top fishing companies were considering the gains and losses. "We are definitely going to win the prize of this fishing exhibition. The quality is needless to say. In fact, we don't really care about the sales. After all, we have Sam's Club and the Sea Market. So you can just take a look." Looking at the hesitation of the people in front of him, Edward Anderson said with a smile. Hearing his words, the people here couldn't help but look at each other. To be honest, Jianghai's price was so expensive that they really couldn't afford it. However, they knew that the quality of Jianghai's fish was really good. Now, the Soaring Dragon Manor's brand hadn't become popular yet. If it really became popular, it wouldn't be easy to snatch food from the mouths of Sam's Club and the Sea Market. Thinking of this, these people who were a little adventurous couldn't help but be a little moved. "Do you accept small reservations?" After hesitating, a staff member of the high-end restaurant came up and asked Edward Anderson. Edward Anderson was still familiar with this restaurant. It could be said to be one of the best Western restaurants around Boston and New York. The most authentic French restaurant naturally had extremely high consumption. That price meant that they could have more choices. However, if they really used the ingredients in Jianghai's manner, the price might be higher. Small reservations are not a problem for this month. After thinking for a while, Edward Anderson glanced at Jianghai behind him. After seeing Jianghai nodding, he said to the person in front of him, "This month was also a trial period for Jianghai. After a month, Prawalton's side would basically clean up the Soaring Dragon Manor's goods area. At that time, he wouldn't accept small reservations. However, he was still in the trial period, so it was okay to accept it. That's really great. To be honest, the quality of your fish is excellent, but we have to consider the problem of cost. We need to try new things, so we can only order small amounts first. However, a month is almost enough. We first want 300 kilograms of American red fish, 100 kilograms of male grouper, 100 kilograms of dragonfly, and 50 kilograms of salmon. As for the rest, we don't need them for the time being. How about tomorrow?" Looking at Edward Anderson in front of him, the person in front of him breathed a sigh of relief. Then he reported some numbers. 300 kilograms of red fish was worth $12,000. 100 kilograms of grouper was worth $6,000. 100 kilograms of anchovy was worth $6,000. And 50 kilograms of Atlantic salmon was worth $5,000. Altogether, they were worth $30,000. To be honest, Jiang Hai didn't care too much about $30,000. However, this was also a good start. In fact, these fish were only a few hundred or dozens of kilograms. In fact, these fish were only the sales of a high-end Western restaurant in a day. That was all. This was also a trial. Seeing that Jiang Hai nodded in agreement after calculating in his mind, Edward Anderson also stretched out his hand. This was a pleasant cooperation. After the first business, Jiang Hai and the others didn't mind. Edward Anderson killed a fish from time to time to attract everyone's attention. Even the nearby fishmongers came over to try the fish in Jiang Hai's manner. To be honest, after they ate the fish, they were also quite tempted. Just like Jiang Hai's beef, Jiang Hai's fish were also better than others. This made the fishermen start to think about other things. Why did Jiang Hai's fish taste better than theirs? Why was that? Some fishing companies and the like were preparing to study this topic and see if they could understand it. As for some ordinary fishermen, they were preparing to go fishing in Jiang Hai's fishing grounds. If the fishermen in Winthrop knew what they were thinking, they would probably laugh in disdain. This was because they were very clear about the defensive strength of Jiang Hai's fish farm. The periphery of Jiang Hai's fish farm was covered with sonar detectors. As long as a large fishing boat entered, it would sound an alarm. Although small speedboats and the like wouldn't sound an alarm, how could a small speedboat catch any fish? Jiang Hai's big idiot and the others underwater weren't to be trifled with. During the day, Jiang Hai's helicopter was always patrolling. They didn't even need to shoot. They just needed to record the boat number and report it to the marine surveillance. Well, not to mention stealing fish, they would have to pay a sum of money if they didn't detain the boat. That would be considered merciful of Jiang Hai. However, looking at the Winthrop people's understanding of Jiang Hai, although Jiang Hai was easy to talk to, it was impossible for him to be merciful. Because everything was ready, and it was the first order for tomorrow. After eating lunch nearby, Edward Anderson called Marin Rupert, Andrew Christian, and Eleanor Cece back. Because there wasn't a lot of fish, it was enough for the three of them to go out to sea. He, Jiang Hai, and Tommy Charles were still here watching. However, the crowd in the afternoon was much less than in the morning. Although Jiang Hai still had a lot of people coming to watch, there were only a dozen people left. Jiang Hai had been sitting here for a whole day. To be honest, he was a little tired. So he greeted Edward Anderson and prepared to go out for a walk. He remembered that there was a good drink shop in the area. He was going to drink something, but before he walked out of the exhibition square, a person stopped in front of him. Looking at the yellow man in front of him, who was only about 1.7 meters tall, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. "What can I do for you?" Looking at the man in front of him, Jiang Hai frowned and asked him, "Hi, Mr. Jiang. I'm Suzuki Mureo, a member of the Suzuki Corporation. I was among the onlookers just now, and I saw your fish. To be honest, I've tasted the quality of your fish myself. It's definitely the best." Hearing Jiang Hai talking to him, the man couldn't help but smile, and then spoke in stiff Mandarin. Yes, he was actually speaking Mandarin. He spoke to Jiang Hai, but although he spoke Mandarin, the disgust in Jiang Hai's heart did not decrease at all. "Stop, if you have something to say, just say it. I don't like to beat around the bush." Looking at the islander in front of him, Jiang Hai didn't have any kindness. He wanted to walk away directly, but he felt that it was a bit shameful. So Jiang Hai waved his hand. It was better to cut the Gordian knot. "I'm being rude. Our Suzuki Corporation is a fishing company in Japan. Our main territory is the station market. I believe that your other fish will sell well in the United States. But I don't know what you plan to do with those tunas?" Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, Suzuki Mureo said with a longing look on his face. At the same time, his eyes were still looking behind Jiang Hai. "You mean those two guys?" Looking back at his two giant tunas that were still covered in ice, Jiang Hai was also thoughtful. To be honest, Jiang Hai didn't consider selling these two tunas here at all. In fact, those two guys are more of an advertisement. Now the global production of tunas has been very low, and bluefin tuna, more than 4 meters long, is absolutely very rare. Some of the old fishermen hadn't seen such big guys for more than 10 years. These two guys were indeed very intimidating when placed there. Yes, those two perfect sprites. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Suzuki Murao's eyes showed a look of fascination. Are you going to buy them? If you want to buy them, I will sell them to you. With a wave of his hand, although such a big tuna is very rare now, there are a lot of them in Jiang Hai's fishery. There are at least 30 or 50 of them, and in less than a year, they will grow to more than 100 or even bigger. Jiang Hai is patient. They will grow into giants sooner or later. Hey, thank you very much. I don't know the price of this fish. Listening to Jiang Hai, Suzuki Murao said to Jiang Hai, well, 8 million. Listening to his words, Jiang Hai calculated in his heart. He once sold bluefin tuna in Puerto Rico, but that fish is only 2 meters long, and these two are more than 4 meters long. How much can they sell for? The 2-meter-long one sold for more than 40,000 and nearly 50,000 US dollars. The 4-meter-long one should sell for 300,000 US dollars. 2 for 600,000 US dollars. But after thinking about it, Jiang Hai directly tripled the price. But after hearing this price, Suzuki Murao's eyes showed a look of ecstasy. 8 million US dollars, no problem. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, he immediately nodded and said to Jiang Hai. Looking at him, Jiang Hai knew that he had set the price too low, and it seems to be too low. I mean 8 million US dollars per fish. Jiang Hai doubled the price. 8 million US dollars per fish. Well, no problem. But after hearing Jiang Hai's words, Suzuki Murao just hesitated for a moment and nodded seriously. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but start cursing in his heart. How much is this game worth? I'm talking about US dollars, not yen. In the end, Jiang Hai still hesitated and said to him, yes, I'm talking about US dollars too. After all, we are standing on this land now, and yen is not much different from waste paper here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Suzuki Murao smiled, then looked at Jiang Hai with a serious face and said, it seems that he is determined to get it. Well, okay. Although he still set a low price, the price has already been called. Jiang Hai is a person who cares about his face, so he is embarrassed to ask for it back. Besides, the two fish sold for 6 million US dollars, Jiang Hai is quite satisfied. Chapter 706. If you have bluefin tuna of this quality in the future, you can contact me at any time. The price is negotiable, please. Watching the workers carry the 2 bluefin tuna away, Suzuki Murakuo said with a serious face, but the smile on his face could not be hidden. Oh, okay. After talking to him, Jiang Hai was also a little confused. He watched the people he had prepared transfer $6 million into his account, while carrying the 2 bluefin tuna away. Jiang Hai was also a little puzzled. He also asked Edward Anderson just now if the price was too low, but Edward Anderson also scratched his head. In his opinion, the price was a bit too high, just like what Jiang Hai said. Their 2-meter-long one was sold for 50,000 yuan, and this 4-meter-long one could be sold for 200,000 yuan according to its weight. Considering that it was not easy for the fish to grow to such a large size, they could sell it for 600,000 yuan, after tripling the price. In fact, this was also the consensus of Edward Anderson and Tommy Charles. Even if this fish tasted better than other bluefin golden spears, they still felt that the price of 8 million yuan was a little high, but the real money was transferred to his account, and the money was cleared, which made Jiang Hai a little confused. Anyway, it's already sold, don't think about it. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai thought for a while, and decided not to think about it. There was no point in thinking about it. There are still tuna of this quality in the manor. If it is really sold cheaply, we will be prepared next time. Boss, you can call Miss Pratt. Among these people, the one who knows the price the best is not Edward Anderson, but Prawalton. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai also nodded, picked up his phone, and went to a place where there was no one nearby to call Prawalton. Hey, why did you call me? Do you miss me? The phone rang less than 2 times and it was picked up. Prawalton's slightly happy voice came from the other side. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also very relieved. Can't I call you if there's nothing? Listening to Prawalton, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. Really? You know I can't wait for you to talk in my ear all the time. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Prawalton also said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. He could feel her attachment to him. Do you want me to talk in your ear when you go to the toilet? Isn't that going to stink? Looking for a place to sit, Jiang Hai sat down and joked with Prawalton on the other side of the phone. As long as you don't care about the stink, I can bite you while going up, haha. Listening to what she said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but think of such a picture in his mind. But it was quickly thrown out by him. He is not a pervert. Ahem, let's stop joking. I just sold 2 Atlantic bluefin tuna, both of which are more than 4 meters long. One of them was sold for 1.8 million yuan, and 2 of them were sold for 3.6 million yuan in total. Is that too cheap or too expensive? After finding his mentality, Jiang Hai asked Prawalton on the other side. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton hesitated for a moment. A 4-meter-long Atlantic bluefin tuna. This can't be sold for this price in the United States. Generally speaking, in the United States, a 4-meter-long Atlantic bluefin tuna is about $1.2 million. You sold one for $1.8 million and still called it cheap. The person who bought your fish should be a Japanese. After thinking for a while, Prawalton suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and then said to Jiang Hai, well, yes, it's a man named Suzuki Mureo from Japan. Although he didn't know how Prawalton knew, Jiang Hai still told the truth. Hearing that it was really a Japanese, Prawalton on the other side also understood. It's true that you sold the fish too cheaply. An American would have sold it for $1.2 million at most, but if it was sold in Japan, it could have been sold for $2.3 million to $2.5 million. That is to say, he made $500,000 from you for one fish. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton on the other side couldn't help but say seriously. When he heard her words, Jiang Hai was a little surprised. First, because he didn't think that this tuna could be sold in Japan at twice the price of the United States, and second, because this damn profiteer. Listening to Prawalton's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curse. The Japanese, who were already very annoying, are even more annoying now. They even dare to cheat my money. Do these guys really not know that I'm the child of the dimension? Bastard. Okay, it's not easy for you to sell this thing to Japan. Selling it for $1.8 million, you won't lose anything. After all, there are customs and quarantine in Japan. If you sell it, the fish may stink before it passes the quarantine. They have their own internal channels and can sell it directly, but we can't. Listening to Jiang Hai gnashing his teeth, Prawalton on the other side also smiled and listened to Jiang Hai's words. Indeed, the geographical advantage of Japan is very obvious. However, although he knew this was the case, Jiang Hai still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Then is there any way we can sell this fish to Japan? After thinking about it, Jiang Hai asked Prawalton, it's better to let the Japanese earn this money than to let them earn it. At least, that's what Jiang Hai thinks. Who can't live with money? We should also have a chance. But this may require Japan's plutocrats to get in touch. I'll help you ask. This is not urgent. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton also knew that Huaxia hated the Japanese. They don't want to let the Japanese earn their money, which is also their idea. Prawalton also expressed his understanding. Okay, then you do your thing first. Hearing Prawalton say to look for connections, Jiang Hai has nothing to say. He is also very conflicted now. If he sells these fish to the Japanese, he can make a lot of money, but he doesn't want to sell to these guys in his heart. However, if he doesn't sell to the Japanese, he won't make much money. Although he doesn't want to admit it, at least in the aspect of fish, the price offered by the Japanese is the highest in the world. Moreover, if he sells his fish to others, it doesn't mean that others won't sell his fish to the Japanese. After all, this is just a fish, not a weapon. Although Huaxia is also a good place to sell at a high price. But there is a problem. Huaxia people are not very interested in the fish raised by Jiang Hai. Huaxia people are more willing to eat Huaxia's native fish, large yellow croaker, Yangtze River knife. If these fish are listed, They can naturally seize a lot of reputation in Chi Li's restaurant. But for fish like salmon, most people don't care about it. Whether they eat chum or Atlantic salmon, chum is dozens of yuan per catty, Jiang Hai's Atlantic salmon. The wholesale price is 300 yuan per catty. With such a gap, probably no one really doesn't care about it. Therefore, although it is easy to make money in Huaxia, it is a little difficult in the aspect of fish. As for the bluefin golden spear and the like, there is no market in Huaxia. Who is crazy to buy a fish, although the fish is very big? But Huaxia's fish is more cooked fish. For dishes like salmon that require sashimi, Huaxia does not have a big sushi restaurant that can introduce this fish. Even if there is, it is too little, and it is difficult to meet the output of Jiang Hai's fish farm. So even if Jiang Hai doesn't want to, the best market for the tuna in his manor is still Japan. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai glanced at Edward Anderson. He is not going to tell them that he sold the fish cheaply, because this matter is really not easy to talk about. He just walked over. After talking to Edward Anderson and Tommy Charles, he went out for a stroll again. This time no one stopped him. As for his bodyguard, Knerson Peters was left in the exhibition hall by Jiang Hai. After all, Knerson Peters is big. Although he is not very good at talking, he is good at helping to move some things. In Boston, this is also half of my territory. There are probably not many people who dare to come and find trouble with me. Moreover, there weren't many people who could recognize him. Thinking about selling fish along the way, Jiang Hai also kept walking along the pier. Not long after, he looked up and found that he had unknowingly walked to Boston's Chinatown. Boston's Chinatown is not big. He has been here once before, and there are many snacks here. Although he had already eaten lunch, looking at the snacks on the street, Jiang Hai's appetite was still piqued. He bought a burrito and some meat skewers. He ate while walking. Snacks like these are best eaten while walking or sitting at home while watching TV. If it is eaten in a restaurant, it is meaningless. As he ate and walked, he unknowingly finished the food in his hand. Jiang Hai also threw the remaining bamboo sticks and paper into the trash can next to him. After throwing it, he just turned around and saw a dessert shop. Looking at this dessert shop, Jiang Hai fell into contemplation. Jiang Hai has been to this dessert shop a long time ago. To be exact, it should be the year before last. At that time, he and Edward Anderson came to book a boat. While Edward Anderson was assembling the boat, he went out shopping. Subconsciously, he saw Sh-20 Clive take a group of children to visit the warship. Then he followed and listened. Then he was treated as a pervert. Then like today he bought some food, walked and looked all the way. When he came here, he met Sh-20 Clive again. If it were not for Delia George helping him out, he might have been treated as a pervert and arrested by the police. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai could not help but chuckle. He began to recall the past between himself and Sh-20 Clive. Sh-20 Clive should be the person he wanted to be close to the most, when he was the most emotionally lacking. The two had meals together many times. The two went to Boston together, and even fought for her. They even developed Winthrop. Sh-20 Clive's shadow was also involved. But since when did the relationship between the two become farther and farther apart? While thinking about it, Jiang Hai sat at the table outside the shop. When the waiter came over, he ordered the same glass of juice as before. Then he squinted his eyes and thought. When people are meditating, time always passes quickly. Unknowingly, the glass of juice has been drunk, but Jiang Hai still can't figure out a reason. Actually, Jiang Hai's current brain development could make him very smart, but he did not use it for this purpose. It was like a top i7 CPU, coupled with a Titan Class 4G graphics card, 32G RAM, and 2T hard disk. Everything was an extremely luxurious computer, but you only used it for Minesweeper. Jiang Hai's brain was at the level of Minesweeper. Plus, he was a bit slow when it came to relationships, so he did not know what to say. Did he and Sh-20 Clive drift apart because she was transferred to the town hall? Or did she slowly drift apart because she couldn't accept that Jiang Hai had too many women around him? Or was it because of Chi Li that the two of them had drifted apart? But no matter what the reason was, the relationship between the two of them now was like that of a familiar stranger. Phew, sometimes people are greedy. Looking at the bowl, thinking about the pot. Jiang Hai, you're wrong. Jiang Hai shook his head and threw away the sadness in his mind. Then he laughed at himself. Ever since the first time he was pushed back, it seemed that he had gone further and further on the road of the Crystal Palace. Actually, this was quite good. At least he didn't lack women by his side. It wasn't like when he first came here. Apart from relying on himself all day long, he could only hug his quilt to sleep. Now he could hug whoever he wanted to sleep. This was progress, wasn't it? Jiang Hai, why are you here? Just as Jiang Hai put down the thoughts in his heart and looked at his watch, it was almost time. When he was ready to go back, a slightly surprised voice sounded beside him. Jiang Hai turned his head and looked. He was also a little surprised. Although Boston itself was not big, it should not be so small. Just now he was thinking about SH-20 Clive. Now, he did not meet SH-20 Clive, but he met her sister, Karma Cliff, and a woman he was very familiar with, Kelly Solon. Why are you here? Looking at the two people in front of him, Jiang Hai was also a little confused. Is this telepathy? Chapter 707. We are here to go shopping. What about you? Why did you come out? Seeing that it was Jiang Hai, Karma Cliff walked to the seat in front of Jiang Hai with a smile and sat down directly. She looked at Jiang Hai with some surprise. Isn't that the Boston Fishery Exhibition? I'm here to participate. With his chin pointing to the dock in the distance, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. Oh, your fish can be sold? When she heard that Jiang Hai came to sell fish, Karma Cliff was also a little surprised. Yeah. Nodding, this person is really smart. He has been here for almost a year and a half unknowingly. It's really amazing. Speaking of which, I miss your fish. By the way, what's the situation with you and sister? Did you break up? Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Karma Cliff said with a curious look, but when he heard her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but cough awkwardly. It seems that we have never been together. Glancing at Kelly, Soren next to him, Jiang Hai said with a little embarrassment. Really, speaking of which, my sister is really stupid. You are such a high-quality stock. Is she going to be alone for the rest of her life, if she doesn't grab hold of it? What's more, you just have more women around you. What's with that? You'll only be motivated when there's competition. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Karma Cliff also kept talking like a machine gun. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai was even more embarrassed. By the way, I heard that you were admitted to university. Where did you go? Listening to her words, Jiang Hai knew that if he didn't interrupt her at this time, he didn't know when she would stop talking. So he immediately spoke, interrupted her, and asked her. Well, this is my senior. Where do you think I went? Karma Cliff said with a smile as she gestured with her mouth to Kelly, Soren next to her. Boston University? Not bad. To be honest, Jiang Hai really didn't know where she went. He only remembered that when he first saw her, she was still a high school student working in a fisherman's bar. Later, she ate with Shinty Clive a few times. After that, there was nothing else. He heard that she went to university last year, but Jiang Hai couldn't remember which school she went to. Sigh, I have no choice. Harvard and MIT don't want me. Haha, I am not good at studying. Fortunately, my sister is doing well in the small town. After I graduate, I will take the civil service exam and work in the small town. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Karma Cliff didn't care. She smiled and said slowly, Are you guys resting today? Did you come here to play? After listening to her words, Jiang Hai also looked at Kelly Soren and asked her. We haven't rested for half a month, so the professor may be too tired and caught a cold. Today is a day off. I happened to meet her, so we came out together. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Kelly Soren also shrugged and said slowly. Since the last Poseidon ritual, Jiang Hai has not seen Kelly Soren, although he arranged a job for her. After entering the institute, Kelly Soren herself was still very good. She knew that it was not easy to find a job outside. She still cherished the opportunity to stay in school as a graduate student, because being a graduate student in the United States, especially when there was a project, was much better than being a graduate student in China. As a graduate student in China, the project funding was funding. The main thing was that the money was also the professor's. How much could the student's salary be? It was more of an honor and an opportunity to become stronger. But in the United States, the benefits of graduate students were still very good. They lived on campus and ate in the cafeteria, but they basically had a salary of about $3,000 a month. Of course, this salary was not fixed, but it depended on the amount of funding. Jiang Hai's investment was very high, so it wasn't a lot for a graduate student to earn $3,000 a month. After all, they also pay taxes. For Kelly Soren, this job was really important. Oh, that's the case. It's really necessary to strike a balance between work and rest. If you get sick from exhaustion, I won't have any researchers. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai also smiled, and Kelly Soren on the opposite side also smiled at this time. It's not easy to see a rich man like you. You have to treat us to food. Looking at Jiang Hai and Kelly Soren talking and laughing, Karmacliff slammed the table and said to Jiang Hai, "No problem. What do you want to eat?" Hearing Karmacliff's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. "This is naturally not a problem. I want to eat ice cream." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Karmacliff glanced at Kelly Soren and gestured with her eyes, then said. Hearing her words, Kelly Soren was also stunned for a moment, then nodded. Although it was only mid-April and not too hot, there was no problem with eating ice cream. "Okay, waiter." Seeing that the two wanted to eat ice cream, Jiang Hai naturally wouldn't say anything about eating ice cream being bad for the body. He was also a person who liked to eat these things. So he waved his hand and prepared to call the waiter over to order ice cream. This shop also has ice cream, and the taste is very good. Of course, this is what Jiang Hai heard from Shinty Clive. "No, we won't eat here." Hearing that Jiang Hai wanted to buy ice cream here, Karmacliff immediately grabbed Jiang Hai's hand and whispered. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also shrugged. "Where to eat if not here? Let's go to J Plix." Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Karmacliff also said with a smile, "J Plix? What the hell?" Listening to her, Jiang Hai looked at her with some doubts. He had never heard of this place. J.P. Plix is a famous dessert shop in Boston. I heard that it opened in 1981. It has been more than 30 years since then. It is not here. It is over at Harvard Square. Hearing Jiang Hai's doubts, Kelly Soren also said with a smile. Harvard Square? Hearing the name of the place, Jiang Hai was stunned. He knew Harvard Square. Shinty Clive took Jiang Hai there. He naturally had some understanding of it. It is actually a square, but it is not big. It can be regarded as another cultural gathering place with all kinds of street performances. But the last time Jiang Hai went there, it was winter. Only some homeless people were shivering in the streets. But now it is mid-April. Although the weather has just warmed up, the leaf buds at the top of the trees have already emerged. According to Kelly Soren and Karmacliff, Harvard Square must be full of street performers. This made Jiang Hai a little interested. So after giving him the money for the juice and the tip, he took Karmacliff and Kelly Soren to the exhibition hall. After arriving there, he first asked Edward Anderson if he was busy. Edward Anderson really had nothing to do. He had basically killed most of these fish in the afternoon. These fish were originally for sale, but they were to be killed to attract tourists. The most important thing was Jiang Hai's tuna. But Jiang Hai had sold them out. What they had to do next was to drive the 3 cars back. It didn't matter if Jiang Hai was the boss or not. So after Jiang Hai came over to ask, they would clearly tell Jiang Hai that they didn't need Jiang Hai's help here. But they still had to deliver the goods tomorrow morning. Don't forget, there was a person who ordered $30,000 worth of goods. At that time, they needed Jiang Hai to come over to prepare the new day's fish. Jiang Hai didn't think about how long it would take. If it was just him and Kelly Soren, they might not even know where to eat ice cream. But there was also Karmacliff. Jiang Hai couldn't do anything to her. So after saying a few words, Jiang Hai drove away in his F-650, leaving Knerson Peters here. In Boston, Jiang Hai's personal safety was still guaranteed. The reason why he drove this car was that it was not too conspicuous. Secondly, the car was modified with a freezer, so the fishy smell was not heavy. It could only be said that it was slightly fishy. Boston was located by the sea. The fishy smell was everywhere. so it was not very annoying. Driving the car, Jiang Hai took Cliff and Kelly, Soren to the famous Harvard Square. After parking the car in the distance, the three of them walked into the square. Sure enough, as they said, Jiang Hai felt the festive atmosphere as soon as he walked in. In this small square, there were many street artists performing there. The most people around was a person who was performing a flute. According to Cliff, this person was from Peru. He had a considerable reputation in this area and could be regarded as a musician. What was different from the general street artists was that although other street artists would not take the initiative to ask for money, they would not refuse if you gave them money. But this person did not want money. That was to say, if you gave him money, he would refuse because in his view, he was not asking for money, but performing a kind of art. Yang Ming had to admit that foreigners were annoying. Sometimes they had too much character, but at least the other party's sincerity was very sufficient. Unlike in China, Jiang Hai really couldn't say anything. He gave money out of sympathy, not out of appreciation of the other party's performance. In addition to the musician who was performing a flute, there were many folk singers. He stood there holding a muji and sang a solo. In the open muji case, there were a lot of change. If one listened carefully, they would find that the singing level of these people was actually good. If they were placed in a KTV, it would not be a problem to be a microphone hog. They could even go to a talent show to participate in the auditions. In addition to singing, there were many street artists here. Some performed magic, some performed mime, and some performed acrobatics. Jiang Hai walked and looked around. It was really a bit unexpected. This was definitely a place where one could come and stroll around when they had nothing to do. He casually gave some change to a few artists who he thought were not bad, which also attracted these people's smiles. Jiang Hai was also quite happy. He walked and looked around. Unknowingly, they had also arrived at their destination this time, JP Licks. It could be seen that this shop was really popular, very popular. The place where the takeout was sold was already quite scary. The area outside the shop for dining was also completely empty. There were even people waiting in line for a table. When he saw so many people, Jiang Hai actually didn't want to eat too much. However, Cliff and Kelly Solon didn't seem to feel anything. They smiled and pulled Jiang Hai over to line up at the takeout window. The three of them chatted and discussed what to eat later. The speed here was not considered slow, but the waiting time was also very long. Hey, Kelly, what are you doing here? Just as they were waiting here in line, a group of people passed by outside the ice cream shop. One of them saw Kelly Solon standing here chatting at a glance, and then shouted in surprise. But after shouting, he saw Jiang Hai next to Kelly Solon. In an instant, the expression on his face was as ugly as if he had eaten a fly. Oh, it's Kim? After hearing the voice, Kelly Solon couldn't help but look back. She also saw the other party, and then said with a chuckle. Hearing that Kelly Solon only called his surname, and not his name, the person who had just shouted could not help but stagnate. Jiang Hai also turned his head at this time, and looked at this group of people. This group of people should be a group of young people. They didn't look very old, about 25 or 26 years old. Jiang Hai knew a few of them, but he couldn't name most of them. Only two of them could be named. One was Kim, who Kelly had just mentioned. His full name was Jack Kim. Of course, this Kim did not refer to the Kim in gold, but the English king. The other man was called Baveda Jean Durat. Was he familiar with him? Yes, when he went to Delia George's house to participate in the charity auction. This Baveda Jean Durat was Delia George's boyfriend. As for this Jack Kim, he was pursuing Kelly Solon, but Jiang Hai took the initiative and took him away. He didn't expect to meet him here. Cough, why are you called Kim? Just call me Jack. We are so familiar with each other. Looking at Kelly Solon, Jack Kim came over and looked at Kelly Solon ambiguously, but Kelly did not panic, and just looked at him for a while. If I remember correctly, this should be the fourth time we have met. Are we familiar with each other? Looking at Jack Kim, Kelly Solon said faintly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai could see that Jack Kim's face suddenly turned red. Chapter 708. In an instant, the atmosphere of the whole scene was so awkward that it froze. Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh at the back. He felt embarrassed for Jack King. Cough, don't say that. After all, we have seen each other many times. By the way, are you buying ice cream? At this time, Baveda Jean Durat, who had some reputation, stood up and said to Kelly Soren, intending to ease the atmosphere a little. Well, yes, do you want to eat? Do you need us to help you, so you don't have to line up again? For Baveda Jean Durat, Kelly Soren didn't say much. After all, although she was not familiar with this person, this Baveda was Delia George's boyfriend after all. She and Delia George had a good relationship, so she had to be a little more polite. Oh no, Min, don't eat this. Hearing Kelly Soren's words, Baveda Jean Durat glanced at Jiang Hai, who was still standing there, and said with a smile. But Jiang Hai didn't deny it, because he didn't care about these little provocations. Do you have anything to do after eating ice cream? Do you want to go racing with us? Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't fall for the trick, Baveda Jean Durat said with a smile. Hearing his words, Karmacliff, who had been silent, suddenly brightened up. Are you going to race? Like in Fast and Furious? Looking at Baveda Jean Durat in front of her, she said with some excitement. Yes and no. It's not that wild, but it's a race. After all, we all cherish our lives very much. We will put some prizes, but not a lot. Listening to Karmacliff's words, Jack King over there took over the conversation, then said to Karmacliff, and then looked at Jiang Hai. He knew that Jiang Hai was the one in charge. Can we go take a look? Listening to Jack King's words, Karmacliff, who had just stepped out of the house, was quite tempting. Karmacliff had always been a good girl. After all, her family was very strict. From the time she was born until she graduated from high school, she had never played such exciting things. After she went to university, although she left home, her roommates were all very obedient girls. They would go to the nightclubs to have a look. Even if they had broken through, they would not dare to go back after the curfew. Now that she heard about racing, her interest was piqued. She looked at Jiang Hai eagerly. She knew that whether she could go or not depended on Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai didn't go, even if she was a little tempted, she definitely wouldn't go. Who knew if these people were reliable? What if they threw her corpse in the wilderness after doing that? Who would she look for? Looking at her eyes, Jiang Hai frowned. To be honest, he wasn't interested in wild parties or anything like that. However, when it came to racing, he wanted to take a look and see if it was as miraculous as it was portrayed in the movies. Among their generation, they had all seen a racing cartoon called Initial D. Although there was NTR in the cartoon, and the main character was the main character, it did set off a wave of discussion among their generation. This allowed them to have some understanding of racing. Moreover, he could see that Karmacliff wanted to go very much, so Jiang Hai couldn't say anything to refuse. Seeing that Jiang Hai was a little hesitant, Baveda Jean Darrow also said with a smile, "Don't worry, you can go and feel the atmosphere. There is no mandatory competition there, and Delia will also go. I'm going to get the car now and then pick up Delia." Hearing his words, Kelly Soren picked up her mobile phone and called Delia George. She clearly wrote it on her face that she didn't believe them. After learning that Delia would indeed go, she looked at Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai thought about it, and also called Bell, telling him to be careful when he sleeps. In case something happened to Jiang Hai, he could call him directly. This was the most important thing. After confirming that Bell was also online, Jiang Hai looked at Karmacliff. Then let's go and have a look, but you have to be obedient. If you are not obedient, I will tell your parents. Looking at Karmacliff, Jiang Hai said seriously. Hearing that Jiang Hai agreed, Karmacliff naturally nodded immediately and agreed with him. Well, let's go get the car first. See you in the parking lot at 7 o'clock. Hearing that Jiang Hai also agreed to go, Baveda Jean Durat also said with a smile and then left. Watching them go to the parking lot, Jiang Hai and the others lined up again. Have you been to this racing party before? Turning his head and lining up again, Jiang Hai looked at Kelly Soren and asked her. I've heard of it before, but I really haven't been there. Baveda and others are very famous around here. Maybe it's also because of this competition. I'm a robot idiot. And since I was a child, my father didn't let me go to dangerous places. Today, I'll go with you to broaden my horizons. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Kelly Solon shrugged and said indifferently. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. He knew that she was telling the truth, because Kelly Solon's family should have introduced her before. She runs a flower shop. Her father, to put it bluntly, has a bit of a, well, mother. Her mother is also a bit timid. This was a public matter in the small town. Children who came from such a family were either more timid and autistic than them, or they were hardliners with strong self-esteem. But no matter which faction they belonged to, they would not go to such a place with a foul atmosphere. Let's take a look. If there's nothing interesting, we'll leave. Hearing Kelly Solon's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. At this time, it was also their turn at the takeout window. Jiang Hai and the others bought an original flavor, a yellow peach and a nut, and then they each ate. After taking the first bite, Jiang Hai couldn't help but nod. This ice cream tastes really good. While eating ice cream, Jiang Hai and the others strolled around, because they had an appointment with those people at 7 o'clock. Now Bavetta Jean-Dirot is going to Winthrop to pick up Delia, and they are also going to eat. If they meet here at 7 o'clock, they will probably go straight there. Jiang Hai and the others also have to have dinner here. But it can be seen that Karma Cliff, who originally came out to play very happily, has no mood to play here at this time. She is more looking forward to the competition in the evening. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai also knew that she didn't have the mood to pick anything to eat, so he casually chose an Italian restaurant. After eating steak and spaghetti, they sat for a while. It was already 6:40. At Karma Cliff's urging, Jiang Hai and Kelly Solon also went to the parking lot. When they arrived outside the parking lot, they found that Bavetta Jean-Dirot and Jack Kim had been waiting here for a long time. Among them, beside Bavetta Jean-Dirot's car, was Delia George, whom Jiang Hai was very familiar with. He even knew the depth of Delia. When she saw Jiang Hai come over, she waved happily. "Hey Delia, is your work done today?" Looking at Delia George, Jiang Hai said to her, "Well, there's nothing fun to do at night in Winthrop. The tourists have all gone to bed." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia George also said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled and said a few words to her casually. Bavetta Jean-Dirot on this side coughed dryly, indicating that everyone was about to set off. Jiang Hai and the others did not say much. They directly got in the car and drove out of the city. Boston was originally a small place. When the city was first planned, although it was more important than New York, it had been built for a long time. The structure was small to begin with. If it wasn't for the fact that it was a large metropolitan area, it would just be a town. After driving for less than half an hour, they had already arrived at the suburbs. According to the Chinese language, this is called the urban-rural fringe. However, there are not so many people in the United States. The urban-rural fringe is still quite desolate. There is a half of a road here with few people. But it has to be admitted that the Americans did a good job in their infrastructure. This half of the road has a history of almost 20 or 30 years. It has been abandoned for almost 5 or 6 years. Although the road is a bit old, there is no sign of collapse. On the contrary, it is still very strong. Jiang Hai's F-650 did not feel the slightest bit wrong when it ran. After arriving in this area, about 10 minutes later, an underground parking lot appeared in front of them. But at this time, the abandoned parking lot, which should be dark, was brightly lit. Countless cars and people were celebrating here at this time. When Bavatar Jean-Dirot and Jiang Hai's car entered, it also attracted some people's attention, especially Jiang Hai's F-650. It was really a bit, not suitable here. The cars here were basically some small cars, modified cars, and almost no SUVs. When Jiang Hai's pickup truck appeared, it was really a bit confusing. What the hell is this? And while they were looking at Jiang Hai's car, Jiang Hai was also looking at these people in the car. To be honest, these people were the so-called delinquents. They looked young, about 25 or 26 years old. The oldest was estimated to be in their early 30s. There were black people, white people, and very few Asians. At this time, these people were all dressed abnormally, weirdly. For example, in this April, Some people were wearing mink fur and sunglasses in the dark. That big gold chain could be used as a dog leash. Their hairstyles were also colorful and messy. They hugged those scantily dressed women and sat on the hood of their car to flirt. Some people could not stand it and had already gotten into the car and kissed there. It was probably because Jiang Hai and the others had arrived early that they had not directly started the fire. But looking at this scene, it would probably be soon. Glancing around, Jiang Hai's first reaction was that there were no good people here. Finding the empty spot where they usually parked, Bavatar Jindarat and the others parked there. Jiang Hai's car was also parked next to it. Then everyone got out of the car. But just as they stood still, a black man wearing mink fur with his arms bare, and a pair of sunglasses, and a head like a pheasant's with 3 different colors swaggered over. "Yo man, are you here to play today? Are you kidding me? Listen to this scream, don't you understand? There is no rice bucket here. You drove a pickup truck, but you didn't swipe your card. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yo." After the black man walked in front of Bavata Jindarat and Jiang Hai, he began to speak while swaying. Rather than speaking, it could also be considered as a rap. "Okay little E, did you eat too much flour? This is my friend. I brought him here to feel the atmosphere. He won't play with us and he can't be a cop. I'm very sure about this. Do you understand?" Looking at the black man in front of him, Bavatar Jindarat smiled and threw a box of cigarettes over, and then said to the black man. After taking the cigarette, the black man glanced at Jiang Hai, then pointed at him rhythmically, and then swayed away. Looking at his appearance, 3 black lines appeared on Jiang Hai's head. "You guys just race here." Glancing at Bavatar Jindarat who lit a cigarette, Jiang Hai said with an awkward smile. "Of course, although it is also illegal, at most, I will be doing community labor. I won't touch other things. You know, I still have a good future." Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Bavatar Jindarat couldn't help but say with a smile, "Do you have the kind of masters like in the movies here?" Hearing that there was no danger, Jiang Hai nodded. Otherwise, he was ready to leave now. Karmacliff saw that Jiang Hai had finished speaking, so she also walked to Bavatar Jindarat's side and asked her, "Hey, little girl, this time you asked the right person. Bavatar is the top driver here." At this time, Jack Jean looked at Karmacliff and laughed, then said proudly. He admired Bavatar Jindarat most not for his family background, but his driving skills. In fact, in his opinion, as long as he had this skill, Bavatar Jindarat would not starve to death, even if he left home. "Hey, there is always someone better. But in this area, I'm not bad. I can be in the top 10. Who doesn't like to hear compliments?" After hearing Jack Jin's words, Bavatar Jindarat couldn't help but say humbly, "That is to say there are 9 people as strong as Bavatar? Are there any here?" But obviously Karmacliff wouldn't give him a chance to pretend to be weak. Then she asked with an innocent face. Hearing her words, the others were a little speechless. "Cough, of course there are." Hearing Karmacliff's words, Bavatar Jindarat also said a little awkwardly, "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."